This is Ocean Robbins, and I am so excited that in about 5 minutes we're going to begin day 6 of the 2019 Food Revolution Summit. We'll be starting with Dr. David Perlmutter at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. GMT. An hour after that, we'll have an interview with Dr. Christian Northrup, and at the top of the hour after that, we'll be on with Rich Roll. The subject for today's interviews is radiance, the science of lasting vitality. We'll start off with Dr. David Perlmutter in about 5 minutes. Throughout this summit, we've been receiving so many thousands of heartwarming, inspiring, passionate comments every day on our broadcast page. And I want to invite you throughout the day today to post your thoughts, your comments, your reactions, your reflections, your takeaways, how this is landing in your life. And also make sure to refresh those comments using the button that's provided there so you can see the most recent ones that have been submitted. Karen Sportsman Taylor said, "I'm so blessed to have found this series. I have bought several of the books by the speakers. This is going to change my way of eating and living. I just finished 30 days of radiation last week, and I've started on the estrogen blocker for my hormone-positive breast cancer. Thank you for all this information to help me heal myself." Well, Karen, we are so grateful you are here. You're in the right place, and I hope you're gaining insights and wisdom that can support you in the journey. I know you are, and we send our prayers to you in your healing on every single level. We heard from Lorraine Galloway, who said, "Loving today's speakers as I do every day. I've been catching the replays too, so I can hear them all twice. So exciting. Thank you for all that goes into empowering us all." Wonderful, Lorraine. I'm so glad you are making use of those replays and absorbing it all. That is just fabulous. If you just joined us, we'll be starting today's broadcast with an interview with Dr. David Perlmutter in just a few minutes now. We heard from Kim Bloomhill, who said, "I am in a live-in career and part of a community with a huge responsibility to look after vulnerable adults. I strongly believe that the training we receive neglects the spiritual and nutritional needs of both ourselves and those in our care. I feel truly privileged to be able to empower myself through platforms like these, to serve those who depend on us for their care concerns. I've watched each presentation and taken notes as much as possible without compromising the care needs of my current client. Although I am new to the nutritional work, I am relatively well versed in the spiritual component, but had no idea until now the impressive synergy between the two. I hope to share what I have learned by including the information that I've picked up through the Relative Career Group channels. Thank you." Well, Kim, thank you for learning and engaging, and I'm so glad that some elderly folks, it sounds like elderly, certainly some adults with some vulnerabilities, will be able to have the benefit of your love and your consciousness in this, and also that you're sharing it with other caregivers. That is beautiful. And I'm touched by your naming of the link between what you're calling the spiritual component and the nutritional component, because I really believe that body, mind, heart, and spirit are all part of the picture. And healthy food, to me, is a means to an end. It's not just about physical health, but it also gives this more vitality, more meaning, more purpose. When you have more bounce in your step and more joy in your body, you're actually able to more generously support the people you love and be more true to whatever your unique purpose is on this planet. At least that's how I see it. We heard from Trisha Legason, who said, "Food Revolution Network, thank you for all the wonderful speakers and sharing all these with the world. I've had to stay up until about 3 a.m. to listen and write notes. I want to remember and share with others, especially family. I have family members who were diagnosed with cancer and had strokes, so I want to share with them what I'm learning here to stop these and prevent other diseases and help all of us improve our health." Well, Trisha, thank you for diving in so deeply, and we want to help you. We don't want you to have to stay up till 3 a.m. listening and writing notes, and we want to help you share this for life with all the people who depend on you and who you care about. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Our team will follow up with you. You'll have the MP3s and the transcripts and all the bonuses for life. Congratulations. As we go through this day, I want to invite all of you to regularly refresh the comments on the broadcast page and post and share your reactions. In a few moments now, we will be on with Dr. David Perlmutter on breakthroughs you need to know for a healthy brain. And then an hour after that, at 9 Pacific, for 4 GMT, that's noon Eastern, you'll hear us on the line with Dr. Christian Northrup on secrets for thriving at every age. An hour after that, with Rich Roll on the plant power way to achieve peak performance. As always, each interview will be expertly guided by my dad and colleague, John Robbins. Will last about 45 to 50 minutes and will be followed by questions, answers, reflections, and take it home insights with me. I am so excited for today's speakers. And now we're ready to begin. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Dr. David Perlmutter. Dr. David Perlmutter is a world-renowned board-certified neurologist, a fellow of the American College of Nutrition, and co-founder and president of the Perlmutter Brain Foundation. He's helped increase awareness of the critical role nutrition and lifestyle factors can play in the prevention of neurological disorders like Alzheimer's, depression, and ADHD. Dr. Perlmutter has received numerous awards for his innovative work in brain research, including the Humanitarian of the Year Award and the Linus Pauling Award. He's written 4 New York Times best-selling books, including Grain Brain and Brain Maker, The Power of Gut Microbes to Heal and Protect Your Brain for Life. So now, David, my dad and I are so grateful to you for your groundbreaking work, and we're so glad to have this time with you. And now for this interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad and colleague, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean. And thank you, David, for being with us again. I really, really love talking with you and these opportunities that we have. And I love bringing your wisdom and your heartfulness to our audience.
Well, I have to tell you that makes me feel so wonderful. I'm delighted to be back with you guys. It's always such a pleasure. Thank you. Over the years, as we have done these, spent this time together, I've always really thought how incredible it was to hear a father and a son working as a team. You know, it's extremely rare. And as this was all unfolding over the years, Austin, our son, was in medical school and then residency and then finished with his internal medicine specialty certification just this past spring. And he and I, David Perlmutter and Austin Perlmutter, MD, have just submitted a manuscript for our book that will be published in January of 2020, working as a father and son together. You know, it's the most rewarding experience imaginable. And you guys have been doing it for so long, so you know what I'm talking about. As we see it, it's working together, not following in the footsteps of your dad, kind of a thing. There's a common goal here. And I'm sure, Ocean, you get it all the time. Oh, you're following your father's footsteps. Well, not really. We're walking the path together. And I will indicate as the father in our duo that I'm gaining much more than I'm giving. I'm giving as much as I can, but I'm learning so much. So it's an experience that Austin and I share with the two of you, and it's made life so much more rich and wonderful.
Well, thank you for telling us that, David. Austin's fortunate to have a dad like you, and you're fortunate to have a son like him, and that you get to work together, collaborate together in a partnership, and that he wants to do that with you. That's the most sincerest form of respect and appreciation I can imagine.
Yeah, it's great.
That's beautiful, David. And I want to ask you something. Every year now, more than 5 million Americans are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And that number, while already tragic, is expected to triple in the next 12 years. The medical establishment has no answers. They have no treatment that works. They have no way of even arresting the progress of the disease, much less reversing it. David, what has led you to the realization that the origin of Alzheimer's, and for that matter, many other serious neurological disorders, might actually be in the gut rather than in the brain?
It's a very good question. And I think as you prefaced this question by indicating that here is a disease that is rampant, that is epidemic, and a disease for which we have no cure because there is no treatment. And I might just add that in November of 2018, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, was a very powerful meta analysis study written by a Dr. Richard Kennedy that involved 2,700 plus individuals and found that in these Alzheimer's patients, patients that already diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, those who were treated with the so called Alzheimer's drugs, it was revealed that not only did the drugs not work, but actually, in those who were treated with the drugs, their cognitive decline was accentuated. They declined more quickly taking the very drugs that were prescribed for them with hopes of actually slowing their progression. They actually got worse. It's as if it's like giving a blood pressure pill to somebody that actually raises their blood pressure. So, with this as a context, it really is incumbent upon us to ask the question, well, what's causing the problem in the first place? The problem is that no one seems to be wanting to talk about it in contrast to the ideas of dedicating billions of dollars in Alzheimer's research to find a cure for a problem that is largely preventable. I will state that in February of 2018, Pfizer, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, abandoned their Alzheimer's treatment research, finding that the return on investment was just not going to happen, that they didn't see any avenues that could be leveraged to develop a financially sound model to create a drug to treat this disease. So it's absolutely the right thing to focus on the idea of Alzheimer's prevention because we have so much peer reviewed literature that's making it so clear that the gut relates to the brain. So that's the reality. And it's, believe me, John, it is well beyond the brain. It's heart disease, diabetes, cancer, so many of our chronic degenerative conditions that are ranked as the number one cause of death by the World Health Organization. Not trauma, not war, not infectious disease, but these chronic degenerative conditions that are absolutely focused on lifestyle choices in terms of their etiology. So you bet it's important, and that's why we talk about it as much as we do. I had the opportunity, actually, just several weeks ago, to appear on the CBS This Morning program. It's a national morning program, and they said we will welcome Dr. Perlmutter on the program, whose Grain Brain book has now been revised, fifth year anniversary revision of Grain Brain. But before we start with Dr. Perlmutter, we wanted to get another opinion. And who did they interview for the opinion but the marketing director for the sugar industry, indicating to counter Dr. Perlmutter's testimony, if you will, that sugar is great to eat in moderation, and that's what decades of research confirm.
Sometimes the people that oppose us teach us the effect we're having. And if those folks who sell sugar to America and to the world in quantities that are just gargantuan are having a problem with your work, that's a good sign.
It is. It's. I think I don't know. It's not a complimentary term, but I've often been called disruptive. I know when I was in elementary school and they said disruptive, that was definitely derogatory. But these days, being disruptive is an indication of challenging the status quo. And frankly, the status quo needs challenging because of where we are. Now 2 years running, life expectancy for both men and women in America is for the first time declining. We haven't changed genetically. We have certainly changed epigenetically. In other words, the lifestyle choices and how they influence our gene expression has clearly turned the tables on this beautiful genome that has been cultivated through hundreds of thousands of generations of humans who have come before us and have gifted us this highly refined genetic code that responds to our environment. But when we turn the tables on those environmental signals by eating inappropriate foods, for example, then that code expresses itself in such a way as to shorten our lifespan. That's what's going on. The argument that we heard was, well, now there are more deaths from suicide and opiates. Yes, there are, but in no way did that small increase influence this overall sudden decline in our longevity.
When you mentioned that you might have been disruptive sometimes in school, I'm thinking about all the kids who have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder related condition, ADHD. About 10% of school aged children in the United States have been given that diagnosis. Now, most of these kids are currently being treated with drugs like Adderall and Ritalin. Yet, we know that what children eat exerts a profound influence over the molecular environment and neurochemical functioning of their brains and can govern the way they process information and influence the way they think and learn and act. The British medical journal, the prestigious journal, The Lancet, published an extremely well-designed study that found that 79% of hyperactive children improved when artificial colorings and flavorings and added sugars were eliminated from their diets, and that these kids who improved became worse again when these culprit foods were reintroduced. David, as a neurologist, what is your view of the medical profession prescribing drugs like Ritalin and Adderall to so many, many kids when dietary changes are, in many cases, both more effective and safer?
I believe that, as physicians, we really have to honor the dictum of primum non nocere, above all, do no harm. And we don't know all of the long-term consequences of exposure of the developing brain to amphetamines. And that's a scary proposition because that's what the drugs you just mentioned are. And in fact, yes, 11% of school-age children in the United States have been given this diagnosis. And more importantly, 2/3 of these children are being treated. And most of the treatments are with the stimulant drugs like Adderall and Ritalin. So again, it's really incumbent upon us to recognize that changing the brain chemistry of the developing brain may have long-term consequences. And interestingly, in a recent report in the journal Neuropharmacology, it was a review of more than 11 million adults, and 32,000 of these individuals had been previously diagnosed with ADHD, and they were evaluated and followed after the age of being 20 years of age. And of these, about 5,000 had been treated with stimulant medications. And what they found was really quite interesting. And this was just published. I actually wrote a blog about it, that the risk of developing Parkinson's disease as an adult in kids who had been given these drugs, ADHD drugs, during their childhood was increased close to 9-fold.
Oh my.
And I will tell you that there really has been no study indicating that actually treating children with ADHD medications has any effect long-term on their academic achievement. And that's the selling point. That's what parents are told in terms of why they should treat their child with these drugs, because otherwise what will happen? They will fall behind. That's the narrative that's played to these parents. And what parent would ever want their child to fall behind so they reach for the drugs? So, we're talking about 6.5 million American children who've been given this diagnosis, and it's worrisome. There's a new study that came out recently that looked at close to, I think it was 800,000 children with ADHD. and found interestingly that there were, as you mentioned, gastrointestinal issues going on, that there is a strong association with ADHD and issues of the gut, things like fecal incontinence, things like constipation. We know that there are changes in the gut microbiota or the diversity of species that live within the gut in children who have been diagnosed with ADHD in comparison with those who have not been, unrelated to whether or not they were on medication. And when we recognize that the gut bacteria play such a fundamental role, and this is new information, in terms of how the brain works day to day, then we, based upon changes in the gut, that the gut, for example, the gut bacteria are involved in making neurochemistry, in regulating gut permeability that plays a role in determining levels of inflammation in the body that can affect how the brain functions. These are very important things to consider rather than just thinking this child is amphetamine deficient. And it gets back to the study that you quoted from the Lancet that is an extrapolation of the so called Feingold diet that was proposed a couple of decades ago and found to be, in fact, quite helpful in children with attention deficit issues, that takes out these things from the diet that can affect the gut bacteria that can have downstream effects in terms of how the brain functions. Do I deny that some individuals have issues with easy distractibility? I don't deny it a bit. But I would say first thing, focus on the diet. Recognize the Israeli study, for example, that demonstrated dramatic improvements in subsets of children with ADHD given a simple dietary supplement called DHA, an omega 3 derived from marine products or from algae for vegetarians, for example. There's a lot to do well before we think we have to choose putting a child on amphetamines.
When you say first thing, focus on the diet, it makes so much sense to me. We know that dietary fiber, for example, increases the ability of our probiotic gut organisms to make various chemicals, some of which are helpful for brain function. We know that dietary fiber helps reduce inflammation, which can further complicate a child's ability to focus. David, do we have evidence that increased dietary fiber consumption in kids actually enhances their ability to focus, to pay attention, and to avoid distraction?
Well, we do. In fact, we have seen research indicating that not just dietary fiber, but actual intervention using probiotics themselves clearly correlates with improved functionality in these kids in multiple ways in which they are assessed. And that again takes us back to your comment. When we understand that inflammation is compromising brain function to some degree, we know it certainly does that in the long run, in that inflammation underlies neurodegenerative conditions by and large. But even in the short run, that higher levels of inflammatory chemicals correlate with distractibility, and that inflammation generally in this discussion is brought on by changes in the gut that ultimately lead to permeability or leakiness of the gut, allowing antigens or pro inflammatory chemicals to get through the gut lining, challenging the immune system. Then it again supports this notion that anything we can do to amplify the diversity and functionality of gut bacteria will be positive. And the last point I'll make is yes, we're seeing higher and higher rates of ADHD, but I think to be fair, it's being diagnosed more often now that the guidelines for making the diagnosis have been dropped to include children as young as 4 years of age. That's scary because by changing those guidelines, it allows pediatricians to feel okay with giving a 4-year-old a stimulant medication. And again, that's very early in the development of the brain. That's a scary proposition.
It is scary. I find it even horrifying to imagine a 4-year-old child being given a drug that's going to massively increase their risk for Parkinson's later on. And what is it doing in the meantime? It's it seems to me that it's almost criminal to go down that path for the medical establishment to push kids down that path or prescribe these drugs so readily to such young kids when we do have other answers. And dietary ones can be so significant for kids in helping them. We were talking about fiber. Fiber is clearly very important, critically important for a healthy microbiome. But something like 95% of Americans don't get the recommended amount of fiber, which may even be lower than the optimal amount. And many people are even unclear as to what foods contain fiber. I saw a recent poll. It found that more than 50% of Americans think that steak is a good source of fiber. David, what do people need to know about fiber, and what are some of the foods that are the best sources of fiber?
Well, you bring up a very good point. And here's a way to make it very simple. There is no fiber in any animal product. So that just should make make it very simple in terms of trying to figure out where fiber is coming from. And similarly, there is no cholesterol in any vegetable product, none. So, I mean, perhaps many of your listeners are aware of this, but I'm surprised over the years that people will say, well, there's certain vegetable oils that have lots of cholesterol, and that just is not fact. So, I think that basically we're looking at plants and a plant-based diet as a source of dietary fiber, and I think it's important that we understand that we don't digest fiber. That's by definition. Fibers are what we call non-digestible carbohydrates. So dietary fiber is very important for many reasons, but one, as you were clearly alluding to, is that a type of dietary fiber called prebiotic fiber serves to nurture our gut microbiota, our gut bacteria. It gives them the fuel that they need, not only to replicate, but also to carry on their metabolic activity and do the good things that they do for us. For example, using this prebiotic fiber to nurture the gut microbiota to improve risk factors as they relate to overweight or obesity, or even with what we call the metabolic syndrome, which has to do with things like abnormalities of the blood lipids, as well as being pre diabetic. In other words, insulin sensitivity or resistance. It's clear that higher levels of prebiotic fiber nurture the gut bacteria, and that is absolutely fundamental for health. Why? Because higher degrees of nurturing our bacterial friends translates to better health for you and me. It reduces inflammation. It helps us maintain normal body weight. It helps us feel happier because it plays a role in balancing our neurochemistry.
Well, that's important to know. David, I'm hearing that prebiotic fiber feeds the beneficial bacteria in our microbiome, and that sets in motion a cascade of positive effects, including reducing inflammation. Is there a connection between inflammation and mood disorders like depression?
Reducing inflammation is the key to getting, for example, depression under control. We understand that drugs are created to increase the happy chemical called serotonin. That's what we call these SSRI drugs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. But the basis of drugs like Prozac and Paxil and Zoloft, et cetera, is ostensibly to allow more serotonin, the happy neurotransmitter, to work in the brain. But understand that the process of inflammation, again, we've alluded to this quite a bit in our conversation. When there's more inflammation chemicals in the body, that antagonizes or blocks the place where serotonin does its magic. The receptor, it's called the 1A receptor for serotonin in the brain, is effectively blocked by the process of inflammation. And perhaps even more important, I know I'm getting deep into this, but I think your listeners are staying with me on this. When there's higher levels of inflammation in the body, it blocks the ability to make serotonin from the amino acid tryptophan in the first place. For those of your listeners who want to look it up, it's called the kynurenic acid pathway. Whatever. The point is that a diet that's got a lot of sugar in it, that's got a lot of additives in it, that has low levels of fiber, i.e., a diet that's going to increase inflammation, is going to block your body's ability to make the happy chemical serotonin. And this is this powerful then relationship that we see between diet and mood. Who knew? It's the reason that there's such a strong correlation between being overweight or obese and depression. Sure, you might say, "Oh, I'm depressed because I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw, therefore I'm depressed." That's called reactive depression, where you react to a certain event and become depressed about a certain thing. But this endogenous deep depression that people feel, that's a manifestation of inflammation, is indeed caused by at least two effects of inflammation: the blocking of the receptor serotonin and the decreased production of serotonin. As I indicated, the biochemical synthesis of serotonin from tryptophan being blocked by inflammation induced by a diet that increases inflammation.
So, a diet that's low in fiber and that has excess sugar and includes additives, which is basically the diet that most people are eating today, is going to increase inflammation. And this in turn decreases our production of serotonin and also blocks our receptor sites from receiving the serotonin. So it's a double whammy that can easily lead to deep depression. And that's very powerful information. And it helps explain why so many people today who are eating the standard American diet are suffering from depression. Americans are 4% of the world's population, but we consume 50% of the world's antidepressant drugs. David, do higher levels of inflammation have other effects on our mental functioning and our brain chemistry?
Higher levels of inflammation inhibit our ability to access the more sophisticated parts of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that allows us to be compassionate, empathetic, and have the ability to think about the effects of our actions today in terms of their implications for tomorrow. So instead, when there's higher levels of inflammation, it blocks the access to this part of the brain, and we revert back to behaving from a more reptilian part of the brain that has less empathy, that is far more impulsive, that caters to our momentary wants and deals with things like narcissism. So this now connects our dietary choices, high sugar, low fiber diet, with mood and our ability to plan or not for the future, our ability to be impulsive or not, our ability to be compassionate and empathetic individuals or not. And as we see what's going on around the globe now, country to country, in terms of how people are treating each other at the same time while the Western diet is spreading around the globe, these are some very interesting and compelling dots to connect. That what may be at the heart of this global shift in consciousness involving more impulsivity and less empathy may very well be instigated by the global shift in the foods that we are consuming.
Well, this is astoundingly important information that people need to have, our culture needs to put into practice, and we all need to understand. The way that we eat has so much influence on the kind of people that we become, on our ability to think clearly, on our ability to empathize, our ability to live with compassion, on our ability to be the people that we were born to be, to live according to the intention in our souls and deep in our hearts that to live in accord with and in alignment with our highest purposes, that things of this significance could be mediated by the food we eat is an astounding realization for many people today, and an important one. And David, in terms of brain health, you've written that above ground leafy vegetables should be the focus of any diet designed to optimize brain health. And by above ground leafy vegetables, I think you're speaking here of vegetables like kale and collards and dandelion greens and asparagus and broccoli and spinach and many others. David, what is it about these green leafy vegetables in particular that make them so crucial to brain health and to our ability to function with empathy and compassion?
I'm going to answer that question in a moment, but I want to say as a prelude to my answer that you're talking to the author of Grain Brain right now, the author of a book that many have said is, all about eating lots and lots of meat and dairy products and whatever animal food you can find. And now you've just actually extracted the real key message in Grain Brain, and it's mostly a plant-based diet. It's not like this is Atkins Redux. You're exactly right. And what we focused on, even more so in the 5-year revision, and absolutely so moving forward in the next book, Brainwash, and that is the fundamental importance of a plant-based diet. Catering to your gut microbiome, your gut microbiota, is really front and center. I've often said that we recommend for women who are pregnant that they should be careful now what they're eating because they're eating for two, but truly each of us is eating for 100 trillion. Every meal you consume is what your gut bacteria will consume, and therefore it really gives a lot more emphasis on the importance of making wise choices, because our gut bacteria hold our future health wise in their hands. So we've really got to do everything we can to nurture them. As I mentioned earlier, our gut bacteria are involved in manufacturing our neurotransmitters. So their state of health is intimately involved in your current mood by virtue of the fact that they are determining the balance of chemistry in your brain. Our gut bacteria are intimately involved in determining the set point of inflammation in our bodies, and not just involved in determining the permeability of our gut lining, but the permeability of what we call the blood-brain barrier as well, keeping things out of the brain that don't belong there. Our gut bacteria are regulating our immune system. They're involved in regulating our metabolism. Are we sensitive to insulin? Are we responding to insulin? The gut bacteria are manufacturing B vitamins that are so important for the body and the brain, what are called short chain fatty acids that are also extremely important in general metabolism. Our gut bacteria are involved in detoxifying our bodies with respect to so many of the toxins to which we are exposed on a daily basis. So we've really got to give them a lot of credit, a lot of gratitude, and feed them the way they want to be fed.
You've spoken of that a number of times already in our conversation. Chronic inflammation increases the production of damaging free radicals. It generates oxidative stress, which in turn leads to increased chronic inflammation. It's a cascade that's intimately involved in the genesis of so many diseases today. Now, David, you recently wrote a piece titled Targeting Inflammation with CBD. CBD is, of course, a non-psychoactive cannabinoid. It's found in the cannabis plant, commonly known as marijuana. David, based on your review of existing research, to what extent do you think CBD is a promising treatment for chronic inflammation?
We're very early on in the research in terms of CBD, and for reasons that I think everyone's aware of, researchers' hands have been tied because of the relationship of CBD being derived from cannabis sativa with just recreational or the abuse of marijuana. And it was brought along with the Schedule 1 issue that made it very difficult to really engage in the research. I look upon CBD, which is the non psychoactive, one of many, many non psychoactive uh, derivatives of the marijuana plant, in terms of its ability to reduce inflammation, in the lines of things like turmeric and other natural anti-inflammatories. So I think the research is really quite compelling. There are multiple mechanisms that are involved, that have been wonderfully teased out and delineated, that demonstrate exactly how CBD is able to influence the production of these mediating chemicals for inflammation. And I think it's very, very exciting. I think this is going to turn out to be very, very powerful. When we see the literature now that relates CBD use to decreasing pain, decreasing inflammation as related to joint issues, arthritic issues. And then, as you well mentioned, the underlying role of inflammation in chronic degenerative conditions. I think the future looks very, very promising for the development of the use of a CBD that, in many ways, acts on pathways that are shared with non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen or other natural approaches like how the omega-3 DHA works, targeting a certain nuclear pathway called PPAR gamma, but changing the expression of the DNA within our inflammatory cells is brought about when CBD binds to the cell nucleus. We're learning quite a bit about it, not just in terms of inflammation, but in terms of other activities. For example, I think that one of the most promising areas of research related to CBD has to do with osteoporosis, osteopenia. I think that when we look at that data, that is really profound, and no one's ever really looked at it. How, for example, even fractures, once they've occurred, at least in the laboratory animal, how much more rapid healing takes place when animals are treated with CBD. So the research is exciting, and it's evolving day by day. So I think the future looks very, very bright for what we'll hear about CBD. Now that the Farm Bill just recently indicated that that we need to consider CBD apart from marijuana now and moving forward.
We do, and I think CBD is already we've already seen enough to know that it's probably a more safe and effective and a better choice than ibuprofen or the other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin or naproxen. And David, but I'm also concerned about it. I'm concerned that the popularity of CBD, and it's spreading rapidly. There are gas stations and mini marts selling it now, and it's put in all kinds of foods from chocolate to kombucha. Do you share that concern?
It's a good a good discussion to have. I mean, as it relates to the brain, for example, we don't know if chronic administration of CBD, in terms of how it changes receptor activity. For example, I mentioned earlier this 5A, rather the 1A receptor, serotonin receptor, is changed in the presence of CBD. We know that the GABA receptors, GABA being the most prevalent receptor or chemical pathway in the brain for inhibition or calming down. What happens when we constantly bombard these receptors, and certainly pain receptors as well, to downregulate them or to turn them down, and then you stop? Is there an uptick? And thus far, the research hasn't demonstrated that, but I think it's absolutely worth following and staying on top of that research to see where that may lead. And beyond that, I think that what we're seeing in the marketplace is the availability of dosages that are far less than what is really being studied in terms of what the publications are revealing. Typically in the studies, you'll see significantly higher levels of dosages being used to get results. So maybe that's a buffer of safety for now. I don't know.
David, I want to ask you about one more food or actually beverage. I'm a coffee drinker, so this may be a bit self-serving on my part, but I have been impressed by the many studies in the medical literature that are finding that coffee drinking is actually good for long-term brain health. A recent study, for example, found that regular coffee consumption could be associated with up to a 65% reduction in dementia risk. That is profound. Um, David, as a neurologist, do you drink coffee and do you find the studies indicating benefits to long term brain health to be credible?
Yes, and yes. I drink coffee not just as a neurologist. I very much look forward to my coffee. And, if I felt that the balance of research would indicate that coffee is more negative than positive, I would stop it in a heartbeat. But that's not what I'm finding. And it's not that I'm just only focused on reading the positive research. Believe me, I read it all. But when I see that coffee consumption is associated, for example, with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, that's really important because it means it targets what we talked about a few moments ago, and that is this notion of insulin resistance. Type 2 diabetes may as much as quadruple an individual's risk for becoming an Alzheimer's patient. Dare I mention that as a disease for which there is no treatment. So, why coffee? Multiple reasons. We know that coffee, like fasting, increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, has a role to play then in increasing ultimately the growth of new brain cells. You describe the relationship between being a coffee drinker and reduced risk for Alzheimer's disease. I think that's very good research. This is a study that was published, in fact, in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, and it clearly related a significant risk reduction of developing Alzheimer's dementia if individuals were coffee consumers. And the lowest risk in this study, with a 65% reduced risk for developing dementia, was seen in those individuals who drank quite a bit of coffee, 3 to 5 cups per day. Tea drinking, interestingly, was not necessarily in this study associated with decreased risk of a dementia or Alzheimer's disease. So again, I am at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease in that my father died of that disease. That has had an impact upon me in terms of my lifestyle choices, that's for sure. But in addition, I think it has further encouraged me to do what I can to really spread the message that our brain's destiny is significantly under our control. It's not up to the doctor to write us a prescription when we suddenly find that we are cognitively impaired. That reality doesn't exist. That is the inconvenient truth. There is no treatment for this disease that we fear the most. So my messaging is one that focuses on our empowerment through our knowledge base, that our lifestyle choices play a significant role in determining how our brain will age with time and our risk for this situation that is horrible. It is probably one of the most emotionally depleting events for caregivers and family members you can imagine. And yet, the irony of it all is that it is, for the most part, preventable. You cannot really monetize preventing a situation, preventing a disease. And yet, that is what needs to happen. I always tell people, yeah, it's going to cost you. If you want to engage this program, and here's the pitch, there is something you have to buy. And what you have to go out and buy probably is a new pair of sneakers. Now, for your listeners who are too young to know what sneakers are, I guess, what do you call them now? Workout shoes, whatever. And that's one of the biggest keys to making your brain resistant to Alzheimer's, and that is regular exercise. And that's my response when people say, what is the number one nutritional supplement you would recommend for preventing Alzheimer's? And I would say, yes, it's physical exercise. So yes, it's nutrition metaphorically, I guess. But when we aerobically exercise, we are directly communicating, once again, like when we fast, to our genome and amplifying the production of this chemical BDNF that says to the body, we're going to make new brain cells. And as published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, there's this powerful correlation between lower levels of BDNF and higher risk for Alzheimer's disease. That speaks volume. I mean, your listeners have got the keys now. And by implementing a diet that is mostly plant based, that is higher, much higher in dietary fiber, again, mostly plant based, a program that welcomes aerobic exercise back to the table as well, a program that looks at the quality, the restorative nature of your sleep. These are the big players in Alzheimer's risk reduction, and it is absolutely an achievable goal. And that's that's the reason to be in terms of your guest today. In terms of my life goal is to to personalize it, to help others not have to experience what I went through with my father, and what I'm hopeful I won't go through personally. It's as I see it today. Will my messaging change in the future? And the next time, John, you and I get together, I hope so. I hope I've learned new things, and I hope to some degree that some of the things we've been talking about over the years may well fall by the wayside as we learn more and more. And that's important because I think that my messaging should change as we move forward.
Well, David, you're bringing to our attention something of profound and I think even singular importance, that our brain's destiny really is in many ways under our control. You're helping us to awaken to the remarkable importance of our inner garden, our microbiome, our gut bacteria, and to how the food we eat can either feed beneficial bacteria, feed our health, or conversely, if we make poor choices, feed illness. On behalf of myself and of Ocean and of everyone involved in the Food Revolution Network, David, I want to thank you for your profound work, for your heartfulness and compassion, and of course, for being with us today.
John, I appreciate this opportunity. I want you to know, as I told you before we went on, how much I love you both and honor your work. And I'm just so looking forward to what's next for you and Ocean and the great work that you're doing. So again, it's important you know how I feel about you.
Well, thank you, David. We do too. We feel right back, same way.
Indeed, we're doing this work together, and we're doing it with hundreds of thousands of others. We've been talking here with neurologist Dr. David Perlmutter, co-founder and president of the Perlmutter Brain Foundation, and best-selling author of numerous books, including Brainmaker: The Power of Gut Microbes to Heal and Protect Your Brain for Life. David, your research, your wisdom are helping all of us move towards healthier guts, healthier brains, healthier lives, more beauty, more joy, more vitality. We're so grateful for your profound insights into some of the most critical health issues of our times. We're grateful for your wise counsel, and we're grateful for your partnership in the food revolution.
Well, thank you. I am so grateful for the opportunity to spend time with you, and just that we're all in this together. You guys are doing great things. You know, John, I read your work, gosh, decades ago. I mean, I love the narrative. I love from where you came, and it's a wonderful story about really recognizing what matters most. And I applaud you for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. David Perlmutter and to my dad and colleague John Robbins for that incredibly informative, fascinating conversation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what others are saying, post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Make sure to refresh the comments so you can see the most recent ones. Our next presentation will be an interview with Dr. Christian Northrup, starting in about 11 minutes at the top of the next hour, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern, 4 p.m. GMT, followed by Rich Roll at the top of the hour after that. Lori Feldspausch said, "Thank you for putting this on. I listened last year and have been about 90% there. My sister was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and my brother with jaw cancer. If that wasn't a kick in the butt, I decided to empower myself. I saw a nutritionist that follows Dr. Furman's plant-based diet, and I feel great getting my numbers back to more normal. We talk about the amount of info that comes in and overload, but I would have never been on this path without listening to such good info. Thank you so much." Well, Lori, our hearts go out to your sister and your brother and your whole family, and we're so glad you're here. And I'm glad that you're seeing some results in your numbers and hopefully also in your life. We heard from Phyllis Huntley, who said, "Thank you, Ocean John, and all the guest speakers from the Food Revolution Summit. It is said that knowledge is power, and this summit is proof. After each session, I think to myself, wow, that is the best session so far. The more I listen, the more I feel empowered to make better choices. I have been suffering with several medical issues that I now know are actually signs of autoimmune disorder. From another health series that Ocean was in, I have begun to get better, slowly but surely. I know I have to make choice each day to eat healthfully and to remove chemically ridden products from my life. I want to purchase this series so I can share with my husband and family. I will have to find the funds somewhere. Thank you again for this summit." Well, Phyllis, thank you for being in this summit with us and for your partnership in this food revolution. And we're certainly sending our prayers for your healing journey. And I just want to say, you mentioned how you have to make a choice each day to eat healthfully and to remove chemically ridden products from your life. And it is a reality and a frustrating one that we live in a toxic food culture where all around us it is normalized and even subsidized and advertised to live in ways, to eat in ways, to have lifestyles that wind up subjecting our bodies to levels of toxins, to levels of violation even, that make us sick. And it would be so nice if the status quo pulled us in the right direction, if you didn't have to, fight an uphill battle or swim upstream in order to do the right thing for your body. But the reality is that together, step by step, we are creating a new tide. We are shifting the course of things, and we are creating a marketplace of informed, passionate, and inspired consumers and humans who are committed to doing something different and creating something different. And step by step, we give each other strength, we give each other heart, and we help to build what I call a new economy. The way I look at it, Food 1.0 is about survival. If you can get enough calories to fill your belly, that's success. And for most of human history, and for many people in the world right now, that's the reality. Food 2.0 is where the central organizing principle is about commerce, the buying and selling of goods. And in Food 2.0, we have a huge array of taste and texture and cuisine. We can eat Chinese and Italian and Mexican food right around the corner in many cases in cities. And Food 2.0 has brought us a lot of options, 31 flavors of ice cream, but it's also morally bankrupt because it's focused on the profitability of the food industry. And then Food 3.0 emerges, and this is where we make health the central organizing principle of our food system. Health for our bodies, health for our planet. And I think there are plenty of healthy profits to be made in Food 3.0. It's just that they come from healthy food. And what I want to stand for is that together, we in this summit are part of standing for and participating in and building and creating Food 3.0. And in Food 3.0, everybody wins, and it gets easier and easier for all of us, even folks who are not in this summit, to be informed and to do the right thing for our bodies and our health and our families and our planet. Nancy Ogilvy said, "I'm glad you've addressed the spiritual and social aspects of lifestyle changes. People's closed minds have been great obstacles to me in the past. to the extent where I had to hide my food from friends and family in order to not exist and heal in perpetual conflict. Today, the vast amount of scientific support you present and the fact that both my parents and several friends are now listening prove that change is possible and that minds are opening. Thanks for including this very difficult and challenging important side of transformation. I now have more hope for myself and those around me, including millions of creatures. Well, Nancy, thank you for receiving the breadth of what we're bringing here, which is, of course, about food, and it's also about humanity and about spirit and about purpose and about so much more. And we're so grateful that your family is with you in the ways that they are in this journey. And I'm sure that the love you've brought to the relationships, even when they weren't, is part of what kept the door open so that when they were ready, they could walk through. One of the things that I love about the work I get to do is all the incredible stories of transformation that we hear on a daily basis. I think these stories can be so healing because they give affirmation to the healthy, they give hope to those of us who are struggling, and they point the way forwards for so many. There is hope, and profound healing is not only possible, it's actually common. Michelle Correa, age 48, of Lyndon, Washington, participated in one of our summits, and afterwards she recorded a few words for us to share it with you now. This is what she had to say.
My name is Michelle Correa, and this is my food revolution story. I am a 46-year-old mother of 3 teenage daughters and wife to an incredible husband. I am full of energy, happiness, vitality, and love. But it wasn't always this way. I was the typical mother who was always so busy taking care of everyone that I often put myself last. Our lives were so busy that we ate a lot of processed and packaged food and items I thought were healthy that are marketed that way in the grocery stores. I was overweight, had a hip that would wake me up at night because it was sore, and hands that ached 24/7 from the arthritis in my knuckles. Don't get me wrong, I was still happy and full of love, but I knew that I had to make some changes if I wanted to live a long and healthy life and to be a healthy role model for our daughters. The Food Revolution Summit really opened my eyes to the depth of the issues surrounding our food supply system. I found out how big companies are pushing their agendas through the government and how their agendas are most often best for their bottom line, but not for our health. I feel angry when I think of all the things I had been feeding my family that were advertised as healthy, that were actually making us sick. Once I discovered the truth, I made big changes, and I have never looked back. Amazingly, the arthritis in my hands stopped hurting. My hips didn't wake me up at night from soreness. I lost a bit of weight, my skin looks healthier, and best of all, I feel incredible. I feel lighter, less sluggish, more vibrant, more alive, and more at peace. I also know that my choices aren't causing harm to animals and workers, to my body, or to the environment. My family also has joined me in eating healthier. This has had a definite impact on all of our health. As I became even more energetic than I already was, and filled my body with all the goodness that plants provide, I also took up exercising, and am now one of those people who regularly exercises no matter what, 3 to 5 days a week. This was a huge change. I have purchased 2 years of the Food Revolution Summit, and it has been an important part of my journey to better health. There is so much useful information to absorb, and the interviews are excellent. The depth of the interviewees is amazing, and I have listened to the presentations many times. With each listening, I gain an incredible amount of knowledge. The Food Revolution Summit just might change your life too. You will come away better educated to make important decisions for yourself. You will become aware of questions you should be asking that you never knew you should ask. You will become a voice to stand up for the health of our environment, our food supply system, and everyone involved. And if you listen, you will become healthier. I know I have.
Thank you so much to Michelle Correa for sharing that story. We heard from Mark Cindric Camarino from the Philippines, who said, "I'm very lucky that I found you. Many Filipinos here are under the control of unhealthy food system. Many of us are addicted to refined sugar, table salt, and monosodium glutamate. Hospitals are surrounded by fast food chains. All these things make me cry sleepless nights, as this reality really strikes my heart, mind, and soul. But soon I realize I have to be strong for the people that I love, so I start dreaming to be a health leader and health educator in any way possible. I start studying books about food and the nutrients and benefits they possess. I even start reading how common health problems can be reversed by holistic nutrition. All of this is increasing my knowledge so I can share some of it with people around me. In my determination to learn more, I've even been writing handwritten transcripts while listening to your summit these past days. I've been transcribing since day one. I've completed 4 interviews. I think that's more than enough. I'll be able to translate some of your words to my language so I can empower many people in my nation. I want to help you reach many people as best as possible. I love you and thank you for all your genuine efforts. Well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing in your journey with us and the struggle and pain you're feeling with the suffering in your country and your passion to do something about it. And we want to make it easier for you. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Now, you won't have to be transcribing because you will have the written transcripts for life, along with the action checklists and all of the bonus resources. So congratulations. Our team will follow up with you, and I know you will put it to wonderful use. We thank you so much. We heard from Alexa Pangras, who said, "Thank you, almost crying. I have read your books a lot and know you care about people. You want to save them. But just thank you, Dr. Perlmutter, for verifying that a plant-based diet is the best way to go." All right, in a moment now, it's going to be time for us to move to the next segment of our broadcast, which is an interview with Dr. Christian Northrup. Here we go. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins, and I am joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Dr. Christian Northrup. Dr. Northrup is a visionary pioneer in women's health. She's a board-certified OBGYN, and she is a multiple times New York Times best-selling author, including her prominent books like Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, Goddesses Never Age, Dodging Energy Vampires, and many more. In 2013, Reader's Digest named her one of the 100 most trusted people in America. And in 2016, she was named one of Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul 100, a group of leaders who are using their voices and talent to awaken humanity. Dr. Northrup has also hosted 8 highly successful public television specials, and her work has been featured on The Oprah Winfrey Show, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, The View, Good Morning America, The Dr. Oz Show, and many, many more. So now, Dr. Northrup, we are so grateful for this time with you. And now for the interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, and thank you, Christian, for being with us again.
Oh, it's so fun for me to be with you. I adore that you're doing a father-son thing here, just like I work closely with my daughter, Kate, and I think it's fantastic that you and I, John, who've been such pioneers in what we've done, are able to now pass that legacy on to our children and the next generation.
It is a special privilege and I feel honored that Ocean wants to work with me.
Yep. That's right.
You know, the last time we spoke, you used a beautiful phrase that has stayed with me. You said that eating organic fruits and vegetables is like breastfeeding from the earth herself.
Yes.
And I've been feeling that that's not just a lovely metaphor. I mean, we know that breast milk provides the absolutely optimal food for a newborn human. Christian, would you say that improving the quality of the food we eat is like a rebirth because the earth produces the very foods we need to flourish?
I would absolutely say that is perfect. And it makes total sense. I remember years ago, I read that if you wanted to be in the here and now, that you would be supported in that by eating what is locally grown right where you are in the here and now. So that would mean that a diet for an Inuit at the Arctic Circle is totally different than the diet for somebody in Hawaii.
One thing that I've noticed about indigenous people is they have a very different relationship to the land, to the earth, than we do. They know their food comes from the earth. In modern society, 4 out of 5 children recognize the McDonald's logo by the time they're 3 years old, which is before some of them know their own names even.
Oh, now that's frightening. That is really frightening. I remember watching Jamie Oliver doing a TV show where he went to one of the food deserts and went into a classroom, and none of the kids could identify vegetables. They didn't know what broccoli was. They didn't know what cabbage was. They didn't even know what a potato was.
So sad. And they're eating a lot of junk food and a lot of processed foods and fast foods. And some researchers are saying that eating junk food alters brain activity in a way that is similar to addictive drugs like cocaine and heroin.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, that's it. You know, we've said, and I know that Mark Hyman has pointed this out, and I don't know how they derived this data, but it makes sense to me, which is that sugar is more addictive than cocaine. But here's a study that I think everyone should know that I really love. And that is, you know, we have all those studies that rats would prefer sugar to cocaine when they're in their little cages. The part they never tell you, though, is that when rats are in enriched environments with other rats and they're doing rat dancing and activities that are uplifting, they don't do the sugar or the cocaine because we're fulfilling our brain chemistry, our need for connection, our need for oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine. We're doing that in other ways besides food.
So when the rats are living in an enriched environment where they have plenty of social contact and they have ways to exercise and express their natures, they aren't nearly as prone to becoming addicted to either sugar or cocaine.
Right. Now, I think that has, clearly we're not lab rats, but we all need an enriched environment. We need to break bread together. Have you ever noticed, I certainly have, that when I'm eating with others in a celebratory environment, or when we bless the food, or we're just celebrating together, the tendency to mindlessly eat, to overeat, to whatever, just goes away because of the nourishment of the community connection.
Yeah, I have noticed that. You mentioned breaking bread together. It's, of course, a long-standing phrase, but whether a person is gluten-free or not, the point
That's
is
correct. The point is we're eating. That's right.
To me, it's a loss that people today are eating so many of their meals outside the home, and when they eat at home, they're eating more prepared and packaged and processed foods, rather than cooking for themselves, and often eating alone. And I think there's few things more delicious, really, than taking the time to prepare a beautiful meal with lots of fresh vegetables and taking the time to enjoy it thoroughly, especially if you can do that with people you're close to.
I agree with you. And you know, in the last decade of my life, that has taken a far more prominent position than it ever had. So back in the day when I'm in the hospital and doing surgery and all that, you just kind of eat to keep going. And I didn't do a lot of cooking for myself. Now I do a great deal, and it's there's something about choosing the organic vegetables, growing the herbs, doing that. You know, there's one thing that I'm thinking of that I want to share. It's a little out there, but have you ever heard of the Anastasia series, the Ringing Cedars of Russia series?
I am not familiar with that.
Well, fascinating, apparently a true story where a businessman, an entrepreneur in Russia, was going up the river in Siberia and ran across this woman, Anastasia, who lives very close to the earth. Apparently, this is all documented. I don't know for sure, but there's something she said in there that made so much sense to me. And it was this, that if you grow your own vegetables, that if you occasionally water those vegetables with water that's been poured over your feet into the ground, the plant will take any toxins in your body and make medicines that will help you heal. Now, think about that. I don't know why, but it landed with me. And I thought, I would bet that's true. I don't know how you would ever prove it. But because we are so close to the earth, because plants do, in fact, respond to us, I believe that there's something in that. How does that land for you?
Well, I know that when a baby is breastfeeding, that baby's saliva will be absorbed by the nipple and will alter the constituency of the breast milk. In other words, if there is a need for something, then the breast milk will shift to provide it. Because there's this symbiotic relationship, this dialogue going on, this conversation between the baby's physiology through its saliva and the mother through the breast milk. So the fact that the earth might respond to our needs by producing through plants nutrients and substances that we need for optimal health is actually not that far-fetched to me. I don't know how you would document it or prove it, but it's a mind-opening thought for sure.
It is, isn't it? If the earth is our mother and we call her Mother Earth, then that should be the case. How interesting. I did not know that about, I knew that mother's milk produced antibodies to whatever is in the environment at the time. I also know, and I learned this from Dr. Bruce Lipton, that the tonsils of a child are the sensors for the environment. And the reason that little kids put everything in their mouths is that they're literally training their immune system through the tonsils and adenoids. They're training the immune system to make what it needs to make for the environment that the child is in. And we have lost this conversation because we have made prevention largely about vaccines and not about what is the environment, what's the immune system doing, how can we support immunity through the foods that we eat, and so on.
You know, when you talk about the importance of tonsils, I'm thinking about how one of the things that I and millions of others love about you and your work is that you challenge some of the misguided dogmas that Orthodox medicine holds to tenaciously.
Oh, no kidding.
You do. You are. When it comes to women's health, and particularly to the health of women as they grow older, which is something of your specialty, what are some of the beliefs that you see as most dangerous or destructive?
Well, I would say the most dangerous belief is that after the age of 50 or after menopause, it's all over. I would say that is the number one most dangerous belief. Or I'll give you another one. My mother had it, therefore I'm going to get it. So those are two very dangerous beliefs that are fed to us by the culture. And they're absolutely wrong. It's interesting. I did a interview yesterday with a young woman who was writing for a magazine that goes into hospital waiting rooms. And her question to me was, what should daughters learn from their mothers about their health? You know, what of your mother's history is it important for you to know? And I said, well, it is important for you to know her age at menarche, when she got her menstrual period, and maybe the age at which she went through menopause, simply because those tend to be reflected in the daughter. And the only reason you would want to know her history of heart disease, diabetes, breast problems is so that you yourself can employ a strategy to make sure that your epigenetics, the environment that affects your genes, doesn't do the same thing as your mother. Because this genetic determinism is dead wrong. And we know that 90% of what happens to us is from the environment, not from the genes. And the environment, whether that be the biochemistry of your thoughts and beliefs or the biochemistry of your food, that's what turns RNA on, and that's the RNA that reads the DNA and creates the proteins that actually affect the day-to-day activity of the cell. And I like to keep pointing out to people, your thoughts and beliefs are part of the environment.
Our thoughts and beliefs have a tremendous influence over our health and or lack thereof. And a lot of people today look around and they see that the average 60-year-old woman today weighs 35 pounds more than the average 60-year-old woman did, say, 50 years ago. And they look around, they see that half of those aged 85 or over, in the US anyway, have Alzheimer's disease or some other dementia. What I want to ask you, Christian, is this. In these times, with those things happening around us, is it really possible for women to age in a very different way, to age beautifully with vibrant health and increasing joy?
Absolutely. But here's what you have to do. Do you know the movie The Matrix?
Everyone does.
Yes. Okay. I watched it the other day. I hadn't seen it for years. I saw it in the theater years ago. You need to step out of the matrix. And I think once you step out of the matrix, you realize that you are not powerless. You're powerful beyond measure if you understand your power, the power that we are talked out of all the time by the mainstream narrative, by medicine, by the mainstream media. Once you understand your power, you step out of that paradigm and you just understand that the portals of aging, Dr. Mario Martinez's work about how our culture teaches us how to grow older through cultural portals. So the big portals are age 35. If you haven't had a baby, then the cultural narrative is your fertility just drops like a stone and you need to freeze your eggs. Not true. Another big portal is age 65. The retirement age was started in 1880 by Baron von Bismarck in Germany, Otto von Bismarck in Germany, to give workers a little time before they died to not have to work. The average life expectancy then at age 65 was 18 months. It's now at least 25 years, but do you see how we have to upgrade what we believe is true? 65 doesn't mean anything because there are 65-year-olds who have the bodies of 30-year-olds, and increasingly there are 30-year-olds who have the bodies of 65-year-olds.
Yes. You know, you're talking about these mainstream narratives, that these cultural beliefs that make up the matrix that we need to free ourselves from.
Yes.
And one of the beliefs in the mainstream narrative teaches women to expect to put themselves last. But you've said that when a woman changes her life for the better, her entire family, whether or not she has children, generally benefits. So what I want to ask you, Christian, is does this mean that the well-being of our families and of society itself in some way depends upon women becoming and remaining healthy?
Yes. So there's an old phrase, happy wife, happy life, or the converse, when mama ain't happy, nobody happy. So again, what we have to do is learn how to joyfully get our needs met and not feel guilty about it after about 5,000 years of patriarchy, where anyone who's one down has been taught the only way to survive is to meet the needs of everybody else except yourself, which therapist Mare Chapman calls othering, which I thought was the best term, othering, as opposed to codependence, relationship addiction, learned helplessness. No, in a society where the feminine has been won down, you survive by learning what the people on top need. That's how you feed yourself and get along. So just to understand how that's ingrained in us is very important.
It is. And one of the mainstream narrative's dominant beliefs is that women are supposed to be creatures of obligation and duty. They're not supposed to put themselves first. And I would imagine as a man that for a woman to challenge that belief could feel both exhilarating and also daunting. And what is it then? And I'm sure it's more than one thing, but that causes the exhilaration of what can be to outweigh the doubts or fears that are likely there as well?
Well, I think that is a fantastic point, and that is our work right there. It's kind of moving from fear to faith. So think about it. Jonathan Wolin wrote a great book called It Didn't Start With You, and it is how trauma is handed down. I think it's David Wolin, sorry. It's handed down in families, in your DNA. And he gives the example of if your grandparents were born in a war zone, then the grandchildren actually have an increased tendency to cower at loud noises and that kind of thing. They've really studied this. And so if you've been taught to de-self yourself, to do othering, then it becomes one of these things where you just do a little bit at a time. I want to give you an example. Back in the day, whenever I was booking a massage for myself, and it wasn't very often because I was in the full-on self-sacrifice mode. And as a doctor, especially a female doctor who'd been told you're taking the place of men, I felt as though, I had surveillance cameras on me at all time. And so the last thing I wanted to do was appear selfish. And I remember when I would book a massage, I did not dare tell my husband that I had done that because he would have complained about the money. Now think about that kind of belief system. There I am. We're both working as surgically trained doctors. And somewhere along the line, I had gotten the idea that I needed to ask him for permission before spending money on a massage, when it would never occur to him to check with me before spending money on a car or a camera or whatever. So I realized that that was internalized in me, and I was playing it out in my relationship. And I had to come to grips with, we have met the enemy and she is us. So this is for most everybody. We need to understand our incredible power to change our reality by changing our unconscious beliefs. And here's the problem, as Bruce Lipton says, our hopes and our dreams and our wishes for the future, for a better life, are in the conscious part of the mind, are only maybe 10% of the mind, and 90% of our beliefs and behavior and what we think is possible is in the subconscious, and 80% of that is negative.
Yes. Yes. Well, a lot of us have the belief that, speaking of negative beliefs, that as we age, our bodies are going to deteriorate. We are going to lose everything that we appreciate about our living in our bodies. And it's a really dark and even ominous and bleak prospect that a lot of us believe we're destined for. So how important then is it? What happens if we realize that our bodies are designed for health and vitality and well-being for our entire lives?
I'm a fan of Dr. Mario Martinez's work, who studied 700 healthy centenarians all over the world. And he found that they practice the causes of health. And when you ask them questions like, when did you last see a doctor? They say things like, I don't know. All my doctors have died. They live in, it's really interesting. They live in subcultures of wellness where they just do not, and they're future focused. So he said to one 102-year-old, "Your garden is lovely." And she said, "Wait till you see it in 3 years." They're not focused on the past. So I think that we don't know our capacity because we are operating in a cultural trance. I want to give you one piece of data from a study that Gina Ogden did at Harvard. She's a sex researcher, PhD. She did the largest sex survey, bigger than Kinsey, bigger than all the other ones. And she found that it was women in their 60s and 70s having the best sex of their lives because they connected spirituality and sexuality. And men are simultaneously told that, by the age of in their 40s, they have, this is a phrase I hate, testopause, right? So now all men are worried that their testosterone is decreasing.
I'm in my 70s, and the belief about men is that when we get to be the age that I am, we lose muscle strength, and our vitality and our verve and vim and vigor and decreases.
Yeah.
That's not my experience, though.
That's correct. That's correct.
And I'm actually setting personal records at the gym in weightlifting that I'm lifting weights I've never lifted despite years, decades of time at the gym. And it's fun to expand the sense of what's possible beyond what I had believed. And, I've noticed that when people change their beliefs, break from the matrix, from the mainstream narrative, and to begin to change beliefs about what's possible in terms of their health and their physical bodies, they will sometimes begin to experience positive changes very quickly, more quickly than they had believed were possible. And I want to ask you, Christian, has that all been your experience also?
Absolutely. So, because our bodies are tuning forks, really, for divine source energy. And as soon as you tune into it, you're plugged in to the very fuel that created your body. And that fuel is passion. It is pleasure. It is, it's kind of orgasmic energy. And I think a lot about the female erotic anatomy in women, which I teach women a lot about, which was not actually depicted in the medical textbooks, still isn't, but it was discovered, 36 years after we put a man on the moon, which tells you something. And that energy is all about passion and pleasure and having a good time. And it's what John Wheeler, the physicist, had a great quote. And it was this: masculinity expresses the idea that there are things worth dying for. Femininity expresses the idea that there are things worth living for. And we need a balance of those. And the world's been a little bit balanced in the wrong direction, brainwashing men to think that the most heroic thing they can do is go and die. Go and die, making the ultimate sacrifice. And I think that this lives in a lot of men, and they feel guilty for pleasurable things that are sustainable. When you go to the gym, you're not like the other guys. And therefore, I don't know, are you criticized by your peers at all who want to sort of bring you back down to where they are?
If they think those thoughts, I'm not really hearing them.
Okay.
But I think they feel a little alienated because they're being around someone who is as fit as I am maybe makes them aware of that they aren't. And I see that as an option. Like they then have a choice. Do they want to become more fit? Or do they want to not become more fit? I mean, I'm there to welcome them. I'm there to enjoy and appreciate the relationship and the connection with them. And what they make out of it is kind of up to them.
Right. Because here's the thing. You're holding a standing wave you're so clear on this and you're so committed on this that they can't change you, they can't push you off base. Now, if you think about our listeners, there are going to be many people who are inspired by this. And I just want to say, because this is the case, that almost everyone has someone in their family who's going to try to pull them off of that particular thing. And, you know, we call it crabs in a bucket. When one crab in the bucket gets up over the edge, the other crabs pull it back down. So this is especially true with women. Who do you think you are? And do you think you're better than everyone else? Oh, come on, have another glass of wine, that kind of thing. So it's important to expect that as you get closer, they say that as you get closer to the gate, the lions roar more loudly. So it's like a test. I think there are people put in our path to make us stronger, and they're often the naysayers.
So these people that are put in our path to make us stronger also can drive us crazy. And I want to ask you, because I know you've written about empaths and people with a lot of empathy, what you've sometimes called old soul empaths. And if someone is particularly empathic, particularly aware of the feelings that others are having, how do you keep from being drained by those people who are put in your path to make you stronger? How do you restore your health and your power in the face of people who seem intent on thwarting you?
Well, the first thing you do is you learn about the tactics of those who are cluster B or have personality disorders, and that's 1 in 5 people. So I talk about that in the book. You also need to accept something that's very, very hard for a loving old soul to accept, and that is this: there are people who are not good at heart. Or as Dr. George Simon, the author of In Sheep's Clothing, points out, is that we've had a belief that only hurt people, people who were hurt in childhood, hurt others. It's not true. There are actually people who have no empathy. It's like they are a different species. They really don't have empathy for the suffering of others. And they target the empath. I like to say, you haven't been chosen, you've been targeted. And once you understand the dynamic and you see that they're actually going for your light, because empaths have a lot of light, and we feel the feelings that others should be feeling, but aren't feeling them. You've got to begin to see yourself as an air purifier. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be there. Your energy field actually can heal an area, but you will not give the planet that gift if you're giving yourself away or letting yourself be drained dry. So for a while, many empaths need to put an entire 360-degree orb of light and divine love around them, top, bottom, back, sides, front. Literally see an orb of light and divine love around you before you go out into the world. And even then, you are going to pick up on the negativity of others because you're the one whose energy field transforms that negativity. But it has nothing to do with you personally. That is our job, is we have to stop taking that personally. It's nothing about us. Old souls are often born with an inferior ego, and we keep that ego alive by looking at things to beat ourselves up for or to improve about ourselves. And the energy vampires are often born with a superior ego. They think that you're supposed to serve them. And so learning that dynamic has been life-changing for me, just life-changing.
When you talk about people who aren't good at heart, people who are, use the phrase energy vampires, the world is in a lot of pain right now, and a lot of people are experiencing trauma. People's fuses are short. Hate crimes and mass shootings are on the rise. The web of life is unraveling in countless ways. We have leadership that could be that seems to enjoy creating a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear. And a question that I live with that I'd like to ask you and me as well to reflect on is, how can we hold the planetary anguish? How can we hold the pain of our times in a way that expands our hearts?
Well, first of all, you need to realize that the mainstream media exists to keep you angry and afraid. So if you begin to pay attention to the alternative media, like, for instance, the newsletter out of Australia called Future Crunch, there is so much good news that you never hear, because the mainstream media lives by the adage, if it bleeds, it leads. And so we are subjected now to a 24-hour news cycle that curates the very worst news from around the planet and feeds it to us with background music that is designed to go right into us. So literally, it's important for us to realize that as the dark gets darker, the light is getting lighter, and we're literally flushing out the dark forces. If you know anything about the mythology of vampires, they don't like light. They can't be in sunlight, and they're getting flushed out. And so I don't think that things are worse than they've ever been. It just looks like it because it's out where you can see it. Now, I don't think that they're going to change tomorrow, but what I'm noticing is that people are waking up and paying attention to what is working.
So I'm hearing you say that the mainstream news is basically a fear production factory.
Yes.
And it's imperative that we find ways to move from fear to love if we're going to be sane, and if we're going to be productive, and if we're going to be part of the solution. And I think that one of the bridges that can enable us to move from fear to love is gratitude.
Yes.
And I remember someone saying that she who has forgotten the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness.
Oh, that is one beautiful quote.
Isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And it seems to me that if we have breath in our bodies and love in our hearts, we have a lot to be thankful for. And my hope is that with all the pains and challenges that life can bring, we never lose track of our gratitude. And in fact, we find ways to strengthen our feelings of gratitude.
And here's the thing, this is not, and here's what you're taught though, that's Pollyanna thinking. If you knew how bad it was, you couldn't possibly be optimistic. You couldn't possibly be happy. That's how it gets us in here. These are largely manufactured problems that we have, that are manufactured by a mainstream narrative to keep us stuck. So the most revolutionary act that you can possibly have is gratitude and love, which changes the electromagnetic field of your body.
I think there's still a certain amount of wearing stress like a badge of honor in our culture,
Yes.
believing that the cynical is the true. And what I want to ask you is, would expressing gratitude be an antidote possibly to that?
Yeah, it would be. In fact, I did a blog on gratitude, and what people said is that, for instance, for a New Year's resolution or for their birthday or whatever, they decided to write down in their journal 4 things they were grateful for every day. And that what it did is it got them back into a mindset they had as children of feeling that the world was a good place and that they were looking forward to school vacation or Christmas or their birthday. They literally began to be in the innocence of a child from looking around just to be grateful. Yeah.
I've seen studies that people who practice gratitude regularly, they have lower blood pressure, they have a lower incidence of congestive heart failure, they have lower rates of coronary artery disease. And I've seen other studies showing that practicing gratitude for even as little as 15 or 20 seconds can lower stress hormones, and it can increase the flow of oxygen to every cell of your body, and can even harmonize your heart's rhythms with your body's other systems.
Yes. Yes. So imagine gratitude that feels so good and is so easy to do is medicine.
Well, I'm wondering about the connection between practicing a healthy lifestyle, making healthy choices, and feeling grateful. Because it seems to me that people who live healthy lives are more likely to feel grateful for their lives.
It's
And
absolutely true. It's true.
also that people who feel and express their appreciation for others are going to be more likely to exercise regularly, to maintain a healthy weight, to eat well, and to do what they can to support their health, to live a life affirming way.
Exactly. It's like the law of attraction. The better it gets, the better it gets. The more you focus on what's working, the more of what's working comes to you, and so on. It's a planet of duality. So you want to focus on the good stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to get more of whatever you focus on.
I've heard you say often that community equals immunity. It's kind of one of
Yes.
your key phrases. It's beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
Now, many studies have shown us that the more social connections a person has, the more robust their immune system is likely to be. So, Christian, if expressing gratitude for your partner or close family members can help you to feel more satisfied in your relationships, does this actually physiologically strengthen your immune system?
Oh, absolutely. And we have those great studies out of the University of Pittsburgh where I love the way science is done, where they had a group of volunteers and they sprayed adenovirus, that's the virus that causes the common cold, into everyone's throat. Everyone was, quote, exposed. And then they measured the amount of tissues that people went through with blowing their nose to determine the degree of a cold that ensued. And what they found is that the people with the most robust and varied social networks, what I would call your safety net, as it were, the people with the most varied safety nets were the least likely to actually catch a cold after being exposed. I think conversely, if you went through life and didn't worry so much about, oh my God, I just touched a railing in the subway and I better use a hand sanitizer and all that. So, when your immune system eavesdrops on every thought. And so if you feel safety and security in the world, it affects your immune system. That's first chakra. Sense of belonging, sense of safety and security affects immunity dramatically. And an example of that, it's after 9/11, the heart attack rate in our hospital tripled. Now, the Twin Towers were not in Portland, Maine, but it was just the fear of, we're no longer safe, we're no longer secure, that literally interrupted the physiology of the body. But the opposite is also true, that we are all one, we're part of the family of man, I am loved, I am secure, and then you look for examples of that.
Looking for examples of living with optimism, with faith, in a healthy way. What exactly are you meaning?
I'm looking at, yes, it's back to the gratitude. I'm grateful that my wood stove is putting out great heat tonight when it's cold, or I'm grateful for the fact that I have food that I'm eating. I'm grateful for the fact that these sheets are clean, and when I lie down to go to sleep at night, I have a roof over my head. I'm grateful for those adorable children that I just saw outside of daycare. And you begin to include yourself in the human race. So you become, it's not that you're looking for love and support. You become love and support. You give to others what it is you're looking for. And then more of that comes into your reality.
If one of our listeners right now is having a hard time feeling grateful,
Mhm.
They're hearing us talk about the medical benefits of it, the way your life expands, and how much healthier and happier you'll be if you're grateful. But they aren't feeling grateful. I mean, I just heard you acknowledge and articulate some gratitudes for common things, ordinary things, and that are beautiful. Um, but I'm thinking about the people who might not feel that. What can they do?
Well, okay. All a feeling wants is to be felt. And I love that you brought this up because too often we're taught or we get the idea that to feel negativity, to be afraid, to be angry is that something's wrong with you. So you have to pretend that that isn't happening, when in fact, just the opposite is true. And generally, our negative feelings come from the misunderstanding of an unhealed part of ourselves, which we could call the inner child. And until his or her complaints, cries, need for attention, need for love is addressed, she or he will keep bugging you forever. And this is what Alice Miller said in The Drama of the Gifted Child. The truth of our childhood is stored in our bodies. And until it is acknowledged, it will not stop tormenting us until we tell the truth. So sometimes that truth can be expressed by pounding pillows. I've often thought a sledgehammer in a junk car would be a good idea.
There seems to be an expectation in our society that women not get angry, let alone express their anger as you're describing. You write about what you call righteous anger. What is righteous anger and why is it healthy?
This is a cause of health that Dr. Mario Martinez identified. And righteous anger is when your innocence or that of another is being threatened. And now this we're coming back to, that you need to put yourself first. And generally the anger is, it says you have a need that hasn't been acknowledged or met. That's what anger means. There's something you needed or wanted that you're not getting. So you need to understand what is the message behind the anger. And most of the time, we don't know what the message is until later. And once you understand that every emotion we have signifies an unmet need, then you begin to put those things together, and then you can ask for the need to be met. And I think the fastest way to ask for that need to be met is to understand that you have the power to attract that need will be met. You have the power to meet that need through connection with the power within. Chances are very good, if you're having a lot of rage, a lot of anger, the people you're with at the moment will not have the capacity to meet that need. But you need to trust that you have the capacity to meet that need. And the first thing you'll do when you realize, oh my God, I need to be touched, chances are you'll feel guilty. You'll maybe feel ashamed. But just remember, anger is a cause of health, not chronic anger, that's resentment. But in the moment, just finding yourself angry about when your innocence is threatened.
When you mentioned the need to be touched, I was thinking earlier you talked about that in your marriage you had reluctance to get massages.
Yes, yes.
And I know that experiencing pleasure is crucial for vibrant health. It's not selfish. It's a gift to ourselves and a gift to the people around us. And I also make a distinction between pleasures that are health enhancing, like dancing in your case, and many forms of exercise and sex and love and so many things, and other pleasures like too much alcohol or too many recreational drugs or excess junk food that are not life or health enhancing. And I think it's important to find healthy pleasures and healthy joys. And when we are on a path of discovering those, we'll find them more easily.
That's right. I call that sustainable pleasure because to me, anything that you have to come, that you imbibe from the outside, that you have to come down from, like we know that alcohol is a depressant and all the rest of it, is not a sustainable pleasure. And it does not enhance your neurotransmitters in a permanent way, the way exercise, meditation, sexual pleasure do. Now, of course, you can be addicted to sex, so we know that that's a real deal. An addiction serves to numb us to what we know and what we feel. So very often we are using what we call so-called pleasures simply to numb us to the fact that we have some righteous anger that needs to be discussed or expressed.
And some needs that need to be met.
And some needs that need to be met. Yeah. Yes. And we're going to, depending on how you were raised as a child, you may have to go through some guilt. I remember when I first did an exercise around nonviolent communication, and the way we did it, it was a workshop, and we were to tell a story from our life, something that bugged us. And then I had two other people, and as they listened to me speak, they would hand me one of the words on the inventory of emotions. Are you feeling da 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 da? So to be validated was astounding. And then handing me the needs, they were listening for my emotion and they were listening for what the need was, like non-judgmental, just listening. Do you need this? Do you need that? I was stunned that it was okay for me to have a need. I kid you not.
Well, that speaks to how deep the programming is.
Yes.
The matrix, the mainstream narratives.
Yes.
And, there are so very many things that I always love about talking with you, Christian, and listening to you and reading your books. You spent decades on the front lines of the medical profession as a practicing OBGYN, and you know better than anyone how the medical profession can become fixated on what can go wrong with our bodies. But you're now dedicating yourself to helping all of us to understand and to flourish by learning how we can enhance all that can go right with our bodies. And you've become a true leader in the movement for women's health and wellness. And as a man, I want to thank you for helping all of us, whatever our gender, to thrive at every stage of life.
Thank you, because we know that the key to a man being happy is to be around happy women. Women are the source of Shakti. And men's bodies, as you know, are acutely tuned in to what's going on with women. Your body literally is like a tuning fork for what's going on with women. So when women are happy and healthy and uplifting the men in their lives, or being very honest about what's going on, men are healthier too.
So true. Well, I want to thank you very much because you really are working for everyone here and all of us, whatever our gender. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Yes, it has. We've been talking here with Dr. Christian Northrup, best-selling author of many fabulous books, including Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, and Dodging Energy Vampires. Christian, this has been an extraordinary conversation. Your work to understand and to articulate the emotional, psychological, and spiritual dimensions of health is truly medicine for the body as well as for the heart and soul. You have inspired so many millions of women and men to reclaim their health and their bodies and their pleasure and their lives. And we want to thank you for your brilliant insights and leadership and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you. The pleasure has been all mine.
Thank you so much to Dr. Christian Northrup and to my dad and colleague John Robbins for that deeply moving, profound conversation. To express your opinions on what you're hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments area on the broadcast page. And do make sure to refresh those comments with the button you can see for doing so. so you can read the most recent ones. Our next presentation will be an interview with world-class endurance athlete and plant-powered fitness expert Rich Roll. It will start at the top of the hour in about 7 minutes. Pepra Pello said, "Wow, what Dr. Northrup is saying resonates so much with me. I'm trying so hard to write my notes like a crazy lady. Thank you, Ocean, John, and Dr. Northrup for your kindness and knowledge." Jamie Chisholm said, "Dr. Northrup and John, wow. We used to be told to give each other daily affirmations. They've upped the stakes in a way that makes much more sense. Amazing statements." And Elaine Smith said, "Dr. Northrup, is there a way we can nominate her for the Nobel Prize for Truth for her description of her reluctance to tell her husband about having a massage, even though he freely spent on his own interests? The bomb." Yes, that was pretty profound, wasn't it? I was so moved. I think that the Dr. Northrup's honesty and vulnerability in sharing her own learning journey and also the epiphany she had was extraordinary. And all of us of every gender can appreciate her discovery and her sharing it in the journey of liberation, empowerment, and authorship of her life. And all of us are benefited, I think, every time anybody steps out of the shackles of the illusions and the chains that we may have carried that kept us confined and smaller than we really are. So I think any one of us moving into liberation automatically helps to liberate all of us in some way, and I'm so grateful for that, as are you, Elaine. Ariella Robinson said, "Thank you for bringing this important information. I've been listening to many summits like this over the last few years, and I've eliminated processed sugars, most grains, and I've drastically increased my vegetable consumption. Best of all is that I've recently started growing herbs and lettuce in our apartment using grow lights. It is great seeing my toddler, who generally won't eat lettuce and picks out other veggies from the salad, grabbing fistfuls of leaves from the plants we are growing and eating them. We're growing in organic soil and watering with filtered water. So not only is he getting the healthy young leaves, he's also getting the beneficial microbes found in the soil and plant that we usually lose by washing produce to remove pesticides. Organics can still use pesticides, and I've yet to see any test showing that organic pesticides don't cause some problems, although nowhere near as bad as glyphosate and similar." Well, Ariella, thank you for sharing this, and I want to give a shout out to all the home gardeners who are listening and participating right now, because gardening is an act of liberation. We are reclaiming our menus and our food supplies when we grow food. And it is indeed a fact that when children grow food, they're more likely to eat that same food. So school gardens, backyard gardens, or as you're mentioning, grow lights inside in an apartment can enable kids and all of us to feel more connected to where our food comes from. And that relationship, that affinity, seems to build interest and appetite. So there's no doubt about it, growing food is a wonderful way to reconnect ourselves with the living earth, to weave ourselves back into the web of life, to feel a sense of rootedness, and to cultivate healthier eating habits for kids and really for everybody. We heard from Kim Trailer, who said, "I'm so happy to have found this summit at exactly the right time. My new doctor said I could eliminate diabetes and cholesterol if I followed a plant-based diet. I've implemented one change and already lowered my A1C 0.5. I've sent this to at least 6 friends. Unfortunately, I missed the first couple days because I was at a wedding, but I have learned so much. Thank you all for educating us and doing this." Well, Kim, thank you for sharing, and congratulations on having a doctor who encouraged you to go on a plant-based diet. That is very special and very wonderful, and hopefully will become very normal for many of us soon. But you've got one of the good ones right now, it sounds like, and how fabulous that you're already seeing your A1C levels going down. Wonderful. Good luck keeping it up. We heard from Austin Perez, who said, "I have a 4-month-old, and I can't always listen to the podcasts at the time they're airing. But last night I fell asleep listening to the replay, and I woke up crying to the part of Anthony Williams talking about compassion for others and self. I know a lot of my health issues have come from the abuse I endured as a child and the harshness of those that have come into my life. I've always been compassionate to myself and others, yet haven't received the same in return. Prior summits for me have been about the nutrition side of things. This summit is perhaps opening my eyes to an emotional need that needs healing. Food is medicine, but so is love, compassion, and understanding. I woke up early just to listen to it one more time. Today is an emotional day for me, but I'm grateful for it because I need healing in this area of my life. Well, Austin, thank you for sharing your heart and your journey and allowing yourself to be touched and to receive what this summit is bringing. I'm so grateful and moved by what you're sharing, and we want to support you. I hear that you have a 4-month-old, and it's challenging to keep up with it all, and I well understand that, and we want to help you integrate this all for life. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Our team will follow up with you, and you'll have the MP3s, the transcripts, the action checklists for life, any time of day or night that you want. And I know that you'll put it to good use, and it will be helpful to your 4-month-old as well. So blessings to you in your emotional healing journey, in your physical healing journey, as your body, mind, and spirit come into greater alignment with your highest well-being. We're cheering you on, and we're celebrating you every step of the way. And we're also so glad to gift you with an empowerment package. And now it's about time to move on to the next segment of our broadcast, an interview with the extraordinary Rich Roll. Here we go. Welcome to the Food Revolution Summit, where we explore how you can heal your body and your world with food. This is Ocean Robbins. I'm joined by my dad and colleague, John Robbins, in welcoming our guest, Rich Roll. At the age of 40, Rich Roll made a decision to overhaul the sedentary throes of overweight middle age, reinventing himself as an ultra-distance endurance athlete. Men's Fitness has named Rich as one of the 25 fittest men in the world, and Men's Health called him the world's fittest vegan. His athletic accomplishments, including clocking one of the top finishes at the Ultraman World Championships and becoming one of the first of 2 people ever to complete Epic 5 Ironmans on 5 Hawaiian islands in under 1 week. Rich is best-selling author of Finding Ultra and The Plant Power Way. He hosts the wildly popular Rich Roll podcast, which is one of the top 100 podcasts in the world with over 50 million downloads. So now, Rich, my dad and I are so grateful to have this time with you. And now for this interview, I'm going to hand it over to my dad and colleague, John Robbins.
Well, thank you, Ocean, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Rich, for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor to talk to you.
Well, you open your book, Finding Ultra, with a moment in your life. And I want to go back to that moment. It's October 2006. You're about to turn 40. You've been sober for 8 years. You're working long hours at your job. And you're a couch potato. You're 50 pounds heavier than you were in college. And your diet is pretty darn crappy. You're eating a lot of cheeseburgers and hot dogs and ice cream and salami and processed snack foods. And you take 8 steps up a staircase in your home. You walk halfway up the stairs and you have to bend over just to catch your breath. And at that moment, something happened. You had an epiphany of sorts. Rich, what happened at that moment? What did you realize at that moment?
I had a very profound sense, not only that I needed to change how I was living, but that I actually wanted to make those changes. And I think those are 2 different things. And, you know, just to kind of contextualize it a little bit, I was able to recognize this moment that I had found myself in because 8 years prior, as you mentioned, I made the decision to get sober. I'd been struggling with alcohol for a very long time. And then one day, like you hear with people in recovery, I woke up and said, this is the day I'm going to get sober. And I ended up in a treatment center for 100 days and built a foundation of sobriety that changed my life in every imaginable way. And I had often, and continue to this day, reflect back on that day and wonder what would have happened had I had a different impulse that morning when I woke up. And when I found myself on that staircase, I had a very potent, powerful sense that I was being revisited with another such day, an opportunity, a little, crack in the universe, a line in the sand that I could step over and perhaps take the next step, the next evolution in what it meant to me to be well. And I think we're all visited with these moments. I think, none of us walk through life without those kinds of opportunities. I just was blessed with enough awareness to take advantage of them as they arose.
Well, a lot of people may be 50 pounds overweight or living a life that's more sedentary than would be optimal for them, but that's what they're stuck in. They've got lots to do and they're time stressed and they don't seem to be able to make the time to live a healthier life. And they may walk up the stairs and find themselves short of breath, but they don't have an epiphany. They don't translate that frustration, that physical stress that they're under just walking upstairs into a commitment or even a desire really to change their life and really rework their relationship to food and to exercise and health. But you did. And I'm hearing you say that partly you recognized that moment for what it could be for you because 8 years earlier you'd had a similar epiphany when you had a moment where you realized that your drinking days were over and that if you continued on the path you were on, the results would be dire. Is that accurate?
It's accurate to a certain degree. What I would add to that response is that when I got sober, it put me on a spiritual path that led me to start looking inward and connecting with what I like to call my higher self. This process that started to kind of broaden my perspective and my horizon about what it is to live a life. And I started asking myself a lot of questions about why I was doing the things that I was doing. I was very unfulfilled professionally. And so I was kind of struggling with these questions when that staircase episode happened. I sort of had this existential crisis that crashed into a health crisis. And I was in enough pain to really do something about it. Pain is a great motivator. And when you're not in a sufficient enough amount of pain, then it's harder to kind of course correct and make those changes. We live in our heads. We're ultimately totally disconnected from any kind of higher purpose or what it means to, like I said, live a life. And it's hard to kind of engage in those more philosophical, spiritual questions. And I think when you are so disconnected, you just normalize your day in and your day out. You get up, you eat whatever you eat for breakfast, you go to your work, and you're just trying to pay the bills and raise kids and do what we do. And I think it requires a moment of pause, whether that comes through meditation or mindfulness practices or therapy or sobriety, whatever it is. I'm always encouraging people to look inward. This is all an inside job. And when you look at the people who are able to make lifestyle changes, whether they be diet or fitness or professional or otherwise, and those that aren't, the people that are usually successful and make it sustainable are the ones who are committed to personal growth in a very integrated, holistic way.
Well, in a remarkably short period of time, you went from being a 40-year-old semi-depressed, overweight couch potato to one of the most outstanding ultra-endurance athletes in the world. And you were accomplishing feats within a couple of years of physical endurance that really almost no one thought were even humanly possible. Would it be an exaggeration to say that changing your diet and changing your relationship to food played a pivotal and central role in this extraordinary transformation?
Oh, there's no question about it. When I changed my relationship to food, I experienced a revitalization, a return to vitality that I didn't think possible. I started feeling great. I hadn't felt that good since I was a teenager. And I myself had normalized what it meant to feel lousy and to be overstressed and overworked and, not take care of yourself physically or nutritionally. And when I made some pretty basic, simple changes in a very short period of time, I had a, resurgence in my energy levels, and, just basically everything changed. And I think that what that did for me was broaden my perspective on my own personal possibility and capabilities. It made me start to believe that I was capable of more things than I thought that I was. That perhaps I had overlooked other areas in my life. If I could change so dramatically and drastically in such a short period of time by changing my diet, what else did I leave on the table that I could look at? And I had been an athlete in college. I swam at Stanford in the late 1980s, and alcoholism really, hamstrung my ability to reach my potential as an athlete. And so I suppose on some level, I felt like I had some unfinished business as an athlete. And that ultimately is kind of what led me back into the world of competitive athletics, to not only, reconnect with my body in a physical way, in a way that had brought me so much joy as a young person, but also to see what I was capable of. Like, I changed my diet, and it really just, altered how I began to see the world. And I think that clearly spilled over into, all aspects of how I was living, and perhaps most dramatically in the athletic context. What worked best for me, and what continues to work best for me, is eating a whole food, plant-based diet, nothing with a mother, nothing with a face, no processed foods, essentially eating plant foods as close to their natural state as possible in the widest amount of variety.
Well, I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times, where do you get your protein? And part of that's because we live in a society in which we've all been misled to believe that meat and dairy products are the safest and the best sources of protein, and particularly so for athletes. But here you are, accomplishing amazing athletic achievements in your 50s without any animal protein whatsoever in your diet. So, Rich, when people ask you, as I'm sure they have, where you get your protein, how do you respond?
Oh, how much time do you have? I could go on this subject for a very long time. I mean, as you mentioned, John, there are so many myths and misconceptions about protein, what it is, what requirements our bodies demand in order to function properly. And we have been duped and misled on a grand scale to believe that if we don't eat bacon as soon as we wake up in the morning, or pound a protein shake, that we're going to be unable to breathe air in and out of our lungs. And it's just a bold-faced lie. When we're talking about protein, we're just talking about essentially amino acids, the building blocks of protein. And in particular, what we call the 9 essential amino acids, which are just the amino acids that our body cannot synthesize on our own, and we need to get from our food sources. And it turns out, and look, this was news to me when I began, that the plant kingdom is rife with these 9 essential amino acids. And it's almost as if nature has rigged it. If you go out and randomly graze on plant foods throughout the day, you will almost invariably meet your daily recommended allotment of protein, which is about 10% of calories, which isn't a lot. It's not very difficult to meet your protein needs. And there's no study that I'm aware of that ingesting protein in excess of that recommended daily amount is going to make you a better athlete, or build bigger muscles, or make you stronger, or repair those muscles more expeditiously in between your workout sessions. And, I'm now 52 years old. I've been on a plant-based diet for 12 years. I can still go out and kill it and compete and push my body, and I continue to build lean muscle mass and get stronger and feel vital without the very foods I was told my whole life that were essential to be a healthy person, let alone excel as an athlete. So there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to get done around the protein question. But to kind of answer your question specifically, where do I get my protein? I get it in the same place some of the largest, fiercest herbivores like elephants and rhinos and gorillas get it, just lower on the food chain, plant foods in all various forms. And the plant foods that I found that work really well for me, that are higher on the spectrum of protein content, are things like beans and lentils, dark leafy greens, as a matter of fact, lots of nuts and seeds. And it's worked great for me. And I think it's a solution we should all entertain.
Well, I do too. You mentioned that you weren't aware of studies that found that eating a lot of protein really had any benefits. Actually, there are studies that show quite the opposite. A few years ago, Walter Longo and his colleagues at USC conducted a major study of people aged 50 to 65, middle-aged people, and they found that those who ate a high-protein diet were 4 times more likely to die of cancer than those who consumed a low-protein diet. The increase in cancer risk associated with a high-protein diet was on par with smoking 20 cigarettes a day. In fact, the researchers said that the data provided convincing evidence that a high-protein diet, and particularly so if the proteins are derived from animals, is nearly as bad as smoking for your health. And yet today we have a lot of people walking around worrying about whether they're getting enough protein. It seems to be a cultural belief that's so entrenched, but we have a huge amount of research, and your personal experience, Rich, attests as well to this, that maybe a lot of us are getting too much. Would you say that's true?
I would say that that is definitely true. I think most people, sedentary people, are walking around consuming anywhere from 2 to 5 times the amount of protein that they actually need and that would be most beneficial for their bodies. I think it's completely insane, this paranoia that, we're somehow protein deprived. And the question that I always pose to those people is, do you know of any doctor that is treating patients for a protein deficiency? They don't, because it's non-existent. The only way to truly suffer protein deficiency is if you completely starve yourself. And yet almost everybody is fiber deficient. What we should be talking about is how much fiber are you getting, because people are not thinking about that. And yet this would be, a great way to kind of shift the dialogue and focus on trying to meet people's nutritional needs in a much healthier and proactive way.
If somebody does what you did, if they replace the animal products and the processed foods in their diet with nourishing, organic, locally grown fruits and vegetables and legumes and nuts and seeds, they're probably not going to become an ultra endurance athlete. What changes can they realistically expect to experience?
They might become an ultra endurance athlete. You never know, John. What they can likely expect to experience, I want to be totally candorous and open and transparent and honest. It's hard to change lifestyle habits. And I think people are so programmed to want to find some kind of shortcut or a way to make the whole process painless. And the truth is, when you make a change in your lifestyle, in your eating habits, you're probably going to have some cravings for maybe a week or 10 days that you're going to have to just kind of weather through. And what I always tell people is it's fine. You'll live. And on the other side of that is freedom. So the first thing I would say is just embrace whatever discomfort might come with making that lifestyle change, because that's an indication that you are actually making a change and breaking out of your old habits. My experience, which is all I can speak to, is that within 7 to 10 days of making the change, I felt better in every category. My mental acuity improved. I was able to focus. My sleep quality improved. My skin cleared up. And I think most dramatically was just an increase in my energy levels, not in like a caffeinated kind of way, but just in a very even way. Like I no longer had those energy lulls and highs that you get with intaking a lot of sugar or high, fructose corn syrup, and then eating lunch and having that crash where you're in a food coma and you have a lull for a couple hours in the afternoon. All of that was gone. And I just had this even keeled, very focused, good energy throughout the day. And I think that's what you can expect. And then looking further down the road, my experience has been that I almost never get sick. I don't get the flu in the wintertime. And that's not to say you become immune from all diseases or anything like that. We're human beings. But, essentially my immune system functions the way that it's supposed to. And I'm less likely to fall prey to the cold in the winter, despite the fact that I'm pushing my body very hard, on my bike and on the trail, etc. And I think you will also experience weight loss, which I think is the big mover and motivator for a lot of people.
Well, I sometimes think that we underestimate how profound can be the grip of addiction to foods that aren't good for us and to behaviors that actually don't serve us. And you were addicted to alcohol for a significant number of years and have now been completely sober for something like, well, more than 20 years, I guess.
Hmm.
What have you learned from your journey with alcohol that could perhaps be relevant to those of our listeners who are struggling with addictions of their own?
I firmly believe that we need to broaden the aperture on how we define addiction. When I got sober from drugs and alcohol, if you had told me there was such thing as food addiction, I would have thought that was ridiculous. And then I spent the next 10 years transferring so many of my alcoholic addictive behavior patterns onto workaholism and unhealthy lifestyle choices, and very much food. And I believe now that food was and is my first drug of choice. When it comes to food, food is a very powerful addictive substance. There are gigantic conglomerates that have invested billions of dollars in trying to craft and create, using science, craft and create food products that hit those addict buttons in people. It's why you can't eat just one chip. When you get the perfect combination of salt, sugar, and fat, it becomes almost impossible to regulate your intake. And I think that we're not mindful enough about how powerful that is. The more that we can see it for what it truly is, I think we can craft and create solutions and trajectories forward that have staying power.
One of the obstacles that some people experience to adopting a plant powerful diet is the idea of giving up dairy products. That doesn't appeal to them. And you've said in another context that kicking dairy was so brutal, you actually compared it to getting off of OxyContin. So, Rich, first of all, can you explain what you mean by that? And secondly, what benefits have you gotten yourself from letting go of dairy products?
Yeah, I think dairy is really powerful. It's very difficult for people to break that habit. There are properties within dairy that activate our hormonal system in the same way that opiates do. There is an addictive hook to these products that's very powerful. And in my own case, when I stopped eating meat, it was no big deal. And I realized I never really liked it all that much to begin with. And I'd just been eating it my whole life, because. But dairy really had its hooks in me. And so that was a challenge to break free from. But 12 years ago, when I started this, there weren't the options that are available now. I mean, now the plant milk section in a lot of grocery stores is as large, if not larger, than the dairy section. And there are food companies out there that are really figuring out how to make dairy-free replacements for the foods that we grew up eating and loving, to make that transition as sort of painless as possible. And I will add that when I finally got off the dairy, that really made the biggest difference in how I felt in terms of my energy levels throughout the day. It was like a lightness in me that really overcame me. And I just realized my body functions way better without it.
Well, a lot of people are experiencing that and enjoying the non-dairy milks and the non-dairy cheeses that are now available more and more widely. Are there some particular non-dairy milks or cheeses that you like that are made from seeds or nuts or other plants that are part of your diet and that you feel are fortifying for you?
Sure. I mean, I would say in a prefatory way that there's good news and bad news with all these meat and dairy analogs that are coming on, into the marketplace now. There's a lot of them that are phenomenal as transition foods when you're trying to shift your habits off of animal products and onto plant-based products. But I think you also need to be judicious and careful to make sure that you're not just essentially eating vegan junk food and deluding yourself into this idea that you're eating a healthy diet, because there's a lot of processed foods out there. In my own case, we just make our own almond milk at home. It's so easy to make with a high-powered blender. It's essentially almonds and water. You can make it in like 2 minutes. and it works just fine for me. But in terms of products that are available at the grocery store, I prefer almond milk. It has a little bit of a lower fat content than coconut milk. In terms of cheese, there's a lot of new products. Seems like there's new cheese lines becoming available every month. I think Kite Hill is doing a great job with the products that they're making. And, they're a little bit more expensive than some of the other options out there, but I find them to be the most satisfying.
Well, thank you for that. It's probably never been easier than it is today to eat vegan junk food. It's widespread. Do you have any guidelines or principles that when you go to the store that you bear in mind in terms of knowing which foods are going to really be good for your body and your mind and your soul, and which ones are more in the world of vegan junk food?
When you read nutrition labels, if there's more than 3 or 4 ingredients in a food product, then chances are it's probably not that good for you. And then beyond that, if there's words in the nutrition panel ingredients list that you don't know what they are or you can't pronounce them, probably not wise to purchase that product, and it's probably not good for you. So it all goes back to plant foods as close to their natural state as possible. The least amount of processed foods that you have in your diet, the better.
You and your wife, Julie, are raising 4 kids. Many parents have trouble getting their kids to eat healthy foods. Do you have any tips for parents or grandparents who would love to have a loving and honest dialogue with their kids about the realities and consequences of food choices?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with this and a lot of ideas. I mean, the way that we've tried to parent our children is to use food in every aspect of meal preparation and nutrition as a homeschooling opportunity. So when we go to the grocery store, we bring the kids, and every food product that we put in the cart or decline to put in the cart is an opportunity to have a discussion, a conversation about why we're choosing this and we're not choosing that, or why you're not going to get that kind of breakfast cereal that you want. From a very early age, we taught them how to cook. The second thing is that we've always tried to treat our kids as empowered sentient beings rather than talking down to them. So from a very early age, just giving them that level of respect in who they are as independent human earthlings, I think has served us well as well, because we're never talking down to them or telling them, you have to do this because I said so. Leading by example is super important. If you're going to tell your kids, look, you got to eat broccoli, but you're face planting in a pint of Haagen-Dazs every night, it's not going to work. Kids pay much more attention to how their parents are behaving than what comes out of their mouth. So I think walking your talk is super duper important. And then the final point I would make that I think is really important is it's easy to get too involved in policing children's food choices in the micro without a sense of the long view. So we're a plant-based family. We have been for many years. There's no animal products or processed junk food in our house. And my wife is an amazing cook, and the kids prefer her food. And so this is how we eat and live. But when my daughter goes over to her friend's house for a birthday party and they're serving cake and pizza and like all the things that we don't have, I'm just not going to be the dad who's going to tell her she can't eat those foods. I'm not going to socially stigmatize her and create a lot of tension around that. If she wants to eat those things, it goes back to treating her like a human being. Then that is her choice and her right to do so. But then when I pick her up and I take her home and she has a stomach ache, we can have a conversation about that. But the point being that I allow her the power to make that choice for herself. And then we can have a conversation about it that's not loaded with any kind of judgment. And the point that I'm kind of driving at is that I'm much more interested in what her habits are going to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now than I am in whether she decided to eat a piece of cake at a birthday party or not.
I've sometimes thought that the parents who have the most trouble discussing food with their kids in an honest and open way and enrolling their kids in eating healthfully are the ones who aren't eating family meals. And there's a lot of families who have very busy schedules and they're rarely home at the same time. And family meals have become somewhat endangered today. And in some families, they've really just about disappeared. But it sounds like you somehow managed to have healthy family meals, even with your incredibly busy and demanding schedules. So, Rich, how does eating together benefit families?
I mean, eating together as a family, I think is super important. And I would say that we're not perfect at it. You know, we now are in a situation in which my eldest daughter goes to a high school that's over 2 hours away by car. And we've had to rent an apartment on the other side of town. And my wife and I split the week staying down there with her. So we're in a situation now where our family is split and we don't have the luxury or the opportunity to sit down as an entire family to eat together, with the exception of the weekends. And that's been trying. And I've noticed the difference between what is happening now and when we were able to at least sit down as a family 4, 5, 6 nights a week. It's not just the nutrition aspect of it. I think it's about communication and sharing.
I want to go back to a topic we were talking about a few minutes ago. Your journey with alcohol, I think, plays some underlying role in everything now. And I mean, you're obviously a guy who's capable of enormous focus and discipline. And yet, you've said in another context that when you were struggling with alcohol, it was only by learning to surrender and to let go that you were able to begin to get well, that self-will wasn't getting you where you needed to be. A lot of us, Rich, think our problems would be solved if only we had more discipline and focus. And many people imagine that making healthy food choices, requires a lot of self-control. So what I want to ask you is, do the spiritual principles of surrender and letting go play any part in your commitment to health? And if so, how might our listeners apply surrender and letting go to their own goals in health and in life?
That's a great question. Yes, for sure. My sober journey has been incredibly impactful and informative on my food journey. And it is true, these spiritual principles of letting go and surrender are really what allowed me to get sober. I am somebody who's very disciplined and focused, and I have a lot of self-will. And my experience with drugs and alcohol was confusing because everything I ever sought out to achieve in my life, I was able to do it through determination and focus and discipline and self-will. And yet my problems with alcohol just could not be solved that way. And it really just dug my grave and forced me to confront myself in a way that I'd never had before, to let go, to surrender. I didn't even know what that meant. It felt like failure to me. But in truth, by allowing a force greater than myself into my life and being open to the possibility that there are other ways of solving these kinds of problems, began to shift my perspective. And I think in a very tactile way, when it comes to food, it's very much the same. And it goes back to, this problem of food addiction. I think there are a lot of food addicts out there, and self-will is only going to get you so far. I mean, I think anybody listening can probably think of those times where they said, okay, I'm going to eat a healthy dinner, and then something happened. And then, before they even could consciously be aware of what they were doing, they were eating something they knew that they shouldn't be, right? This is so powerful. It overrides our ability to control through discipline and self-will. A takeaway for somebody who's listening that can be helpful is to not try to solve the problem by yourself, but to instead raise your hand and say, I need help with this. Like, I just cannot stop eating food X, or I just cannot maintain a healthy nutritional protocol for more than a week. Please help me. Find other like-minded people who want to do the same thing as you. That can be done virtually or in person. It can be with your family, but if your family's not supportive, find friends at work or just somebody to hold yourself accountable to. And I think just having that external pressure in a good way can make a huge difference. And then just acknowledging that we're human beings and nobody does this perfectly, to allow yourself to fail and to understand that failure isn't really failure, it's just learning, to embolden you and empower you to continue the forward progress. So again, look inward, connect with yourself, try to understand what your higher self wants for you, and get help. It's okay. You don't have to do this alone.
There's a saying that pain pushes and vision pulls. And you've obviously been able to use the pain in your life as a catalyst for transformation and growth. Do you also envision where you want to be? Do you do things like you want to reach a certain goal, you want to run a race in a certain time, and you visualize that time? Or do you have any other ways of kind of establishing a connection between where you are and where you want to be?
Everything that I've accomplished has been really organic, and it's a function of and a direct result of following my curiosity and trusting my instincts. And I did a lot of internal work so that my instincts could be trustworthy. And I've done a lot of work to kind of clean my vessel mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, so that those internal signals can be heard accurately and abided by. Once I latch onto something, though, like I say, okay, I'm ready to do a race, it'll take me a long time before my instincts will say, okay, this is the one that I want to do. But once I kind of identify this is what I'm doing, then I'm very goal oriented. I will break out the calendar and look at the end date, whether it's a race or whatever it is I'm trying to achieve, and I'll work backward from there to create very specific steps that will get me to where I want to go. So it's really a little bit of both, I think. But I think, a lot of people set goals or write on vision boards, but they haven't done enough internal work to really know whether those goals are really the right goals for them to be setting for themselves. So to me, you got to get clear with yourself. And that begins with, mindfulness and meditation practices and taking care of yourself, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and tending to your relationships. Like, it's a very, holistic approach to all of these things. I think if you want to be, ultimately as successful as you can and to maximize your potential.
It sounds as though service is a key component to your path. Am I reading that accurately?
Absolutely. Service is at the core of what I do. And that's another thing that I learned in sobriety. It's a core principle of 12-step, which is to give back what you have received and to do it freely. And my experience is that when you find something that gives you bliss or fulfillment or purpose, it's not only incumbent upon you to find a way to give it back, but that process of giving it back is what really fortifies your life with the meaning and the purpose that we're all seeking. The more service that I'm in, the more giving I am, the more grateful I am for what I have. I get paid back tenfold. You could chase service from a selfish perspective because when you are in a giving spirit, the universe really does show up to make sure that you are provided for.
Well, you are an example to millions of people. I want to talk with you a little bit about someone to whom you are a profound example, and that's Kerri Lee Walsh Jennings, by almost any measure, the greatest female beach volleyball player in world history. After she won the gold medal in the 2004, 2008, and 2012 Summer Olympics, and then won the bronze medal in 2016, most people thought she would retire. But no, she set her sights on the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo when she will be 42 years old. And somebody asked her, how do you expect to compete at your age against 20-year-olds? And in her answer, she named you as her inspiration to continue competing at the absolute highest level. And I can understand why she would mention you that way. Rich, just before your 51st birthday, not that long ago, you and your partner finished as the top American team in one of the most grueling and demanding ultra-endurance events in the world, a world championship race in which some of the most accomplished ultra-endurance athletes in the world swim and run 46 miles across 26 islands of the Stockholm archipelago. And I'm sure that water is really cold. So what I'm getting at here, Rich, is in the subtitle of your book, Finding Ultra, there is the phrase, rejecting middle age. What does that phrase, rejecting middle age, mean to you?
Age really is just a number, and how we think about aging has a lot to be desired. It's a function of social mores and not of science. I was raised in a time, and I'm sure you were as well, John, in which by the time you hit 40 and were into your 50s, it's all about slowing down and getting ready to retire and enjoy your golden years and live off the pension and play a bunch of golf. And I don't know who came up with that idea, but to me, it's preposterous. I changed my relationship with food so that I could live a vital life, that I could continue to grow and progress, not just as an athlete, but as a human being across as many disciplines as possible. And I find myself now at 52 still able to go out and be competitive on the world stage in the sports that I do, to be able to engage young people, millennials on their level. And I don't feel any sense of slowing down whatsoever. So all I can do is share my own experience with aging, which is that I don't really think of myself as a 52-year-old. I think of myself as a human being having a spiritual experience. And as long as my body is welcoming the athletic pursuits that I continue to force it to engage in, I'm going to continue to do it. And I do it because not because I feel like I have anything to prove. I do it because I love it, and I feel like it's my blueprint and part of one of the things I'm here to do, so that I can be an example for people like Carrie, et cetera. And I think it's amazing that there are world-class elite athletes out there who are rethinking what it means to mature as an athlete. And I think nutrition is a really important piece there. For generations, athletes never thought twice about what they put in their bodies. And now, for the very first time, they're realizing that those choices that they're making are super important. And the athletes that I see who are most receptive to dialing up their diet and really improving the nutritional quality of their daily routine are the ones who are in the twilight stage of their career, where it becomes much more important to pay attention to the tiny details if they want to continue to compete for as many years as possible.
I think a lot of us look around and we see people who are middle-aged or older, and we see the elderly, and it's not a pretty picture. They're in many cases overweight, diabetic, have heart problems. As they get older, the rates of dementia are startling and very disappointing to a lot of us. And so aging looks like deterioration. Aging looks like a downgrade at every step. And it seems like when we look around that this deterioration starts pretty darn early. But I think that a lot of what we're seeing is the consequence of the diet that people are eating. And if they were eating foods that were truly nutritious to their body, mind, and spirit, they would be thriving, and they'd be energetic, and they'd be vibrant, and they'd be vital, and they'd be cognitively here and present and thoughtful and creative and happy. And they wouldn't be what we see so much of. And so I'm always interested in people who are kind of redefining aging in whatever way they are, aren't falling prey to the cultural belief systems that can trap us into thinking that it's just all downhill from here, and realize that we still have a lot of options if we take care of ourselves.
Yeah, these things beget each other. The better that you're taking care of yourself nutritionally, the healthier foods that you're eating, the more energy you have. And that energy gets translated into being engaged with life. When you see people walking around in middle age and they're overweight and they have poor energy, it's almost as if they've given up. They don't have the energy to chase the things that make them happy or give their lives meaning and purpose. So when you clean the vessel, then you have that energy, and then you can stay engaged with life in a way that becomes very difficult when you're not taking care of yourself. So all of these things are important, and I think there's an interplay here. Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more.
I hear you saying that we all are capable of a better, healthier, more vibrant, and authentic version of ourselves than we may have grown accustomed to identifying with. Rich, what is it that you hope your example will inspire in others, including those who aren't athletic or even interested in athletics?
That we're all capable of so much more than we allow ourselves to believe. It's not that I expect somebody to then suddenly reinvent themselves as an ultra endurance athlete or necessarily to overnight, adopt a 100% plant-based diet. What people will see is, wow, if this guy, can go out and he'll go all the way out, on the edge athletically, and he's going to go 100% plants. I need to rethink what I'm doing. There is room for me to clean up my plate, and maybe I should get a little bit more active. And I think when you can just inspire people to step out of their comfort zone a little bit and try something maybe they wouldn't have before, then that creates its own momentum. And, I trust people to then go on their own version of my journey. I think that we're all walking around disconnected from just how strong and powerful and capable that we all are. So I see my role as to just be a catalyst to get people to rethink some of their preconceived assumptions about the world and themselves.
Well, thank you for doing that and for doing it so beautifully. You are an example and an inspiration to millions of people, to me as well, by the way. And I've run marathons and I've done triathlons, enough to give me exposure, enough to appreciate the difficulty of what you've done. Frankly, I'm in awe of a lot of what you've done. But as impressed as I am by what you've done, running and swimming and biking, I'm even more inspired by your profound commitment to service and to helping others to be their best and healthiest possible selves. Most of us will never run a marathon, much less compete in an Ironman triathlon, much less do 5 Ironmans in 5 days like you have. But all of us can do more than we realize. And I'm sure that many who are listening to us right now are thinking, well, if Rich Roll can do what he does, I can certainly up my game a bit. I can eat more veggies and legumes and seeds and nuts. I can eat a lot less junk. I can explore how to make my diet even healthier. I can walk for an hour several times a week or go for hikes on the weekends or find other ways to be active and engaged instead of sitting around as a passive consumer, as our culture teaches us too often to be. Richard, listening to you makes me want to be more alive. It makes me want to be more vibrant and a more positive version of myself. And I'm sure that many people have that experience when they listen to you. It's been a great pleasure for me to talk with you today. And on behalf of Ocean and myself and everyone involved in the food revolution, I thank you for your amazing example, for your humility and your greatness, and of course, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. My my heart is beating quickly hearing that. It means a lot to me, John, as a pioneer in this space. And, you have been a massive inspiration to me, and the work that you and Ocean are doing and your organization is truly incredible. You're changing lives, you're changing the world, and, we're doing it together. This is a collective effort to try to help people become the best versions of themselves. And I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit today.
We've been talking with ultra endurance athlete and wellness advocate Rich Roll, best-selling author of Finding Ultra and The Plant Power Way. Rich, your athletic accomplishments are extraordinary. You don't just walk your talk, you also run and swim and cycle it. And yet I think your wisdom, your vision, and your service are making even a far more profound impact. We are so grateful for your heart, for your passion, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Rich Roll and to my dad and colleague, John Robbins, for that moving, beautiful presentation. To express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what other people are saying, post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page. Make sure you refresh those comments using the button on there so you can see the most recent ones that have been shared. Gail St. Lawrence said, thanks, Rich. I basically have the food down, but I need to get moving. Ryan Yoch said, I love Rich's comments on service. I didn't know his story with alcohol. I'm a 55-year-old recovering alcoholic that also runs ultra marathons. Rich's life story really resonates with me. I really needed to hear this message today. Thank you. Well, Ryan, thank you for sharing, and I can imagine how it would resonate with you. Those are some remarkable parallels right there. Yes, I thought that was really powerful too. You know, we all have addictions of different kinds to things that aren't in our best interest, whether it's junk foods or junk thoughts or substances or ways of being that are not really in our best interest, but somehow we keep getting sucked down the rabbit hole. And the journey to freedom from those addictions is a liberatory one. And obviously, we've heard some steps today that Rich has taken in his journey of recovery. I think obviously they don't just apply to alcohol, they apply to all of the addictions we face today and our journey of healing. Chris Schaus said something that several people asked about, which was asking what was the quote that John had said, which Dr. Northrup loved so much. Chris said I was not quick enough to get it written down. So I believe the quote you are referring to, Chris, is, she who has forgotten the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness. Again, that's, she who's forgotten the language of gratitude can never be on speaking terms with happiness. Mary Barshiesi said, I commend Rich for focusing on good choices and decision-making skills with his kids rather than just on the food. The skills being taught are transferable to every aspect of their life and ultimately will lead them to the right healthy choices. And relatedly, Amina Ackroyd said, I'm so glad this summit brings together all our favorite health speakers. I wish there would be something similar to this for kids, trying to get my kids into it. Any ideas how to motivate kids to start learning? Well, Amina, I'm a dad, and I'm passionate about helping the next generation along. And whether you're a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, or you've got, nieces, nephews, siblings, any kids in your life that you care about, we all have children that in our lives, and we all have influence in those relationships. So how do you be a positive influence with kids? Well, here are some of the top tips, and you may find that some of them apply not just to children, but to other folks in our lives as well. These are some of the top tips I've come up with, and I wrote about this in my new book, 31-Day Food Revolution, in some depth, but I'll give you the highlights here. First of all, American kids and those in many other developed countries currently consume about 90% of daily calories from a combination of animal products, factory farmed animal products no less, and processed foods. Most kids today are getting less than 10% of their calories from whole plant foods. And obviously, that's not a good thing. But it doesn't have to be this way. So some of the top tips if you want to influence kids in a healthy way. Number one, be a role model. More often than not, kids don't do as we say, they do as we do. In my own life, I had a potato chip habit. That's my weakness, I admit it. And we had a lot of battles. When my son Bodie was about 10, he would scour the house looking for the potato chip bags, which I started to hide to try to keep them away from him. He would tear them open and grab a big handful, and I'd tear the bag away from him and give him 3, and he'd grab it back and grab 10, and we had a lot of conflicts. I got better and better at hiding them, and one day he found a bag of potato chips under our bed, ran off into his room, locked the door, and ate the whole bag. Every time we went shopping, he wanted to go straight to aisle 5 so that he could grab a bag of potato chips to munch while we were in the store. There was a lot of conflict. One day I asked my wife, Phoenix, what she thought I should do, and she said, I think you should stop eating potato chips. It might sound obvious, but it hadn't occurred to me, and I was like, oh no, I was afraid you would say that. So anyway, I had to stop. And the amazing thing was, once we stopped having potato chips in the house, Bodie stopped craving them, and before long we could even go shopping, and he seemed to have forgotten all about it. So sometimes we do have to practice what we preach, and our kids inspire us to do that. Another tip is to eat family dinners at the table. There are a lot of studies showing that when people eat dinners together, they eat more fruits and vegetables, and they tend to eat fewer fried foods and drink less soda. And it also has a positive social, developmental, and behavioral impact. Number 3 is don't bring unhealthy foods into the house. You can clean out the cupboards. You can replace junk food with healthier options. If it's not in the house, they and you are a lot less likely to eat it or drink it. Number 4, don't make special kid options that are less healthy. Some people make a teriyaki stir fry for the parents and chicken nuggets and fries for the kids. A lot of restaurants have kids' meals. Typically, those are less healthy options. And so I recommend making one thing for everybody. Number 5 is kids have to try just one bite. We do this in our family. Even though our kids are 18 now, we still sometimes say, you know what, you may not like it, but just try one bite. Sometimes it takes 4 or 5 or 10 tries before a kid gets familiar with it and they decide to go further. But creating a habit of good manners, of at least being willing to try something, can be really beneficial. Number 6 is make vegetables more appealing. There are studies showing that kids are more likely to eat vegetables when their parents employ different tactics, like chopping them up in funny shapes, like stars, or making them in the shape of a cartoon character, or calling them a funny name, like referring to broccoli as trees, serving veggies with sauces and dips, like peanut sauce, ketchup, teriyaki, maple mustard. You can put a drizzled cashew cheese sauce over broccoli to make it more appealing. You can also puree vegetables and hide them in recipes. Getting kids involved, showing them documentaries when they're old enough, like Forks Over Knives or Cowspiracy. Getting them involved in cooking the foods, helping them chop and learn how to stir, even at an early age. A lot of kids love to be able to make their own recipes. Reading kids books about healthy foods. There are some wonderful kids books that glorify vegetables. Find them and share them. And be patient. And remember, it can take a while for kids to change habits, especially if they're used to chicken nuggets and fries. So be positive, be patient, and try presenting foods with enthusiasm. Don't be like, oh my God, there's a cake with all this enthusiasm, and then, oh, and here's some broccoli. Because guess what that's going to lead to? They're going to feel the energy. But if you're like, wow, this broccoli is so good. It's fresh from the farmer's market, and you can just feel the love and the life in it, and then feed them with that energy, you might get a different response. So those are some tips. I hope those are helpful. And again, in 31 Day Food Revolution, I cover all this in a lot more depth, along with many other tips to help you implement a healthy eating lifestyle. So you can grab a copy at 31dayfoodrevolution.com, or of course you can get it on Amazon. Marjorie Stratton said, "This summit is helping me understand many things about what I can and I need to do. I'd really love to share this knowledge with my family, but I'm not sure how to lead them in a way they will not dismiss." Well, Marjorie, first of all, thank you for caring and for seeking to find a way to share. I do think that the specific recordings from this summit may be one of the most powerful gifts you can give to someone you love, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm so excited that we get to offer the empowerment package, because it does make it so much easier to share. And I also want to talk for a moment about some of the underlying principles that might help you be a positive influence on others. I think it's of critical importance that we don't only talk to people who agree with us, people who think like us, because if we want to create cultural change, of course we need to live our message, and a lot of people will also need to hear it, and we need to talk to people who are from a whole range of backgrounds and perspectives. That's how you create influence. And remember that people think the way they do and understand the world the way they do for a reason. That doesn't mean they're right, but it means that it serves a purpose in their own way of making sense of the world. So I often reflect that people tend to think you're highly intelligent when you agree with them. And it does help to build some rapport or connection if you can communicate thoughtfully and clearly, and if you can express a certain amount of variance from what they already believe, while also landing in a certain amount of common ground. So whatever their values are, whatever makes them tick, whatever their worldview is, if you can understand it, you'll be much more effective in being able to build from that real ground of connection, and then ultimately be able to influence it by adding something new to the mix. Sometimes I think one of the greatest keys in influencing someone is actually to listen to them. When people feel heard, they're more likely to be open to hearing you. So listening to someone and truly hearing them can be an act of generosity. It can awaken in the other person an interest and a curiosity in returning the favor. And of course, just because you listen doesn't mean someone will feel truly heard. So use your own best judgment, but The bottom line I'm trying to convey is that if you want to influence people, you'll be more effective if you can build connection with them. And now I want to share another message from Renee Garavet, who said, I've just been in awe about how inspiring this summit has been. Every day has been better than the last. All the information is so helpful and so motivating. My family and I have already been implementing some of the things we've learned from the last few days. Everything makes so much sense, and the way it's presented in the summit, it makes something click. And you get this epiphany and realize that, of course, we should all be eating like this, and you start to wonder why you didn't realize this before. She said, thank you for bringing all these wonderful speakers together and for providing this amazing, life-changing information to the world. Well, Renee, thank you so much for participating. I am so glad you're already applying what you're learning and putting it into action. And I know you're going to go a lot further with that. And we want to help you in that process. And we want to empower you in that process. So we're going to gift you with an empowerment package. Our team will follow up with you. You will have the MP3s and the transcripts and the action checklists for life. Congratulations. And for everybody else listening right now, I want to make sure you know the empowerment package is on super sale, 50% off through the end of the summit. And if you want to own it all for life, and if you want to invest in and support our mission and help us to succeed in sharing this message more widely with ever more people, and if you want all the bonuses from our speakers and partners, which themselves are worth thousands of dollars, now is a great time to step forward so you can own it and have it all right away. So please go ahead and check it out if that interests you. You'll find the link right on the broadcast page. We're now moving towards the end of day 6 of the Food Revolution Summit. Again, to express your opinions on what you've been hearing and to find out what others are saying, post and engage in the comments section on the broadcast page, and make sure to refresh those comments so you can see the latest ones. You can also join in the conversation on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Food Revolution Network. Come on back and join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT for Transform. Rise up for a healthy food revolution. We're going to have some extraordinary and powerful presentations from Dr. Mark Hyman on what you can do to stop industrial food. From Dr. Vandana Shiva on how you can feed a healthy future for life on Earth. And from Ron Finley on how to grow thriving communities. And in the meanwhile, you can post your comments and share in the conversation, catch the replays, and check out the empowerment package. And I also want to invite you to enjoy some delicious, healthy food. Today's recipe of the day is fiber-rich and fabulous buffaloed lentil bowls. We wish you a wonderful, healthy, thriving day. This is Ocean Robbins, signing off from day 6 in the 2019 Food Revolution Summit. No matter where you come from or what you've been through, the simple truth is you are meant to thrive. You deserve boundless energy, a clear mind, and a lean and healthy body. You deserve to feel confident and clear about what you eat and why. The Food Revolution Summit is packed with insights, and trying to catch and absorb all of them can be hard. That's why we created the Empowerment Package. With your Empowerment Package, you can own the entire summit, plus all the transcripts and loads of bonus materials for life. Absorb this life-changing material at a pace that's comfortable and easy for you. Join in this movement. Support this mission. Buy your Empowerment Package today.